You ever wonder why some spaces just make you feel calm? Like you walk into a room, and without even thinking, your shoulders drop a little, your brain just chills out, and other places, they stress you out for no reason at all. Well, it's not random. Turns out your environment is literally programming your brain every second. The lights, the colors, the sounds, even the way a room is shaped. It's all talking to your psychology 24/7. And get this, most of the time, you don't even notice it. This video, we're going deeper than that. You're about to unlock the hidden ways your environment shapes your mind, your mood, and how you move through the world. We're talking sound, lighting, color, space, architecture, even nature, and how all of it is affecting you right now in ways you probably never realized. But before that, drop a quick comment and let us know where are you watching from and what time it is for you. It's amazing how we are all connected, each of us chasing that perfect night's sleep. If this resonates with you, like this video, subscribe to our channel Restwise, and join the journey. We're more than just a sleep channel. We're a community of sleep explorers, discovering how a great night's sleep can truly transform your life. Now, get comfy and let the wonders of ambient psychology guide you into a peaceful sleep. You ever notice how your body tenses up in traffic, even when nothing's actually happening? You're not moving. You're not late. You're just there, surrounded by sound, people, chaos, and yet your chest feels tight. That's environmental stress, and it's wild how good it is at sneaking up on us. See, most people think stress comes from deadlines or arguments or major life events. And sure, it does. But what we often overlook is that our surroundings, the stuff we passively live in all day, every day, can silently flood our nervous system with stress signals, without us even realizing. Let's start with noise, one of the most underrated villains in modern life. Now, noise isn't just annoying, it's physically activating. When your brain hears a loud, unpredictable sound, like a car honking, someone slamming a door, or that upstairs neighbor who's apparently training for a tap dancing competition, your amygdala, the part of your brain that processes fear and threat, lights up. It doesn't matter if you're used to it. Your brain never actually tunes it out. It just works harder to cope. This kind of exposure triggers what's called a stress response. Your heart rate goes up, blood pressure increases, cortisol kicks in, and the more it happens, the more your baseline stress level rises. Over time, you're walking around in a state of low-key fight or flight, just from your environment. A 2018 study published in Environmental Health Perspectives found that long-term exposure to noise pollution, especially in urban settings, was linked to a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. Why? Chronic stress. The environment literally exhausts your system, but it's not just sound. Let's talk crowding. You've felt it before. That shoulder-to-shoulder feeling on a packed subway or at a loud event. You feel like you can't move, can't think, can't breathe properly. Your body starts scanning for exits, even if you're not in danger. That's because humans have something called proxemic needs. Basically, we each have a comfort zone when it comes to personal space. When that space is invaded, especially by strangers or unpredictable movement, your stress response activates again. Even if nothing bad is happening, even if everyone's just existing near you. And in big cities, this isn't occasional, it's constant. You're always sharing space, always adapting, always giving up a bit of that invisible bubble your body craves. But here's the thing. You don't have to be in a chaotic city to feel environmental stress. It can be subtle. Maybe your apartment has fluorescent lighting that makes everything feel sterile and cold. Or the layout of your office makes you feel exposed. No walls, no privacy. Maybe there's constant background noise from traffic, construction, neighbors. Your brain collects all these inputs, and it decides, often without your permission, whether you're in a safe or alert state. And get this, even visual clutter can create psychological stress. Not because it's ugly, but because your brain has to process it. The more stuff in your visual field, scattered papers, chaotic decor, mess, the harder your prefrontal cortex has to work just to focus. This type of cognitive overload can lead to mental fatigue, lower attention spans, and yeah, you guessed it, more stress. And over time, all this ambient tension, it compounds. It turns into chronic stress, the kind that wears down your immune system, messes with your sleep, and leaves you feeling tired even when you haven't done much. So, what's the fix? First, it's awareness. Just knowing that your environment is talking to your body all day long can be powerful. Start small. Try minimizing sources of unpredictable noise where you can. Turn off harsh appliances, play soft music, use white noise. If your space feels crowded or visually chaotic, clear it. Even one clean surface can give your brain a sigh of relief. And when you do have control over your environment, choose softness, choose calm, choose quiet. Because the truth is, our brains evolved in quiet, open, natural spaces. For most of human history, we weren't surrounded by sirens or fluorescent lighting, or people packed into high-rise boxes. We were in nature, listening to wind, water, birds, watching the sky. So if your mind feels overwhelmed by life right now, it might not be you. It might be your environment. The good news: you don't need to move to the mountains to find peace. You just need to understand how your environment is shaping your nervous system. And then, make small shifts that speak the language of calm. You're not weak for feeling overwhelmed. You're just human. And your surroundings matter more than you think. Olfactory influences on mood and behavior. Scent rarely gets the credit it deserves, but it plays a surprisingly active role in how we think, feel, and behave, all without needing our attention to work. Unlike sight or sound, smell doesn't get processed through logic or language first. It goes straight to the parts of the brain that handle memory and emotion, which means it can influence us faster than we can think about it. This is why ambient scents in a space, whether it's lavender in a bedroom, peppermint in an office, or citrus in a store, can shift your mood, focus, and even the way you make decisions. Let's start with how it affects emotional state. Lavender is probably the most studied scent when it comes to reducing anxiety. In controlled experiments, people exposed to lavender consistently show lower heart rates, decreased cortisol levels, and improved calmness, even in high-pressure situations. One study even found that people performing stressful math problems while breathing lavender performed better and felt less tension. On the other hand, peppermint works almost like a mental wake-up call. It's been shown to enhance alertness, attention, and working memory. That's why it's often used in study environments, or sometimes even in athletic training rooms where focus and reaction time matter. And then there's citrus. Bright scents like lemon, orange, or grapefruit tend to elevate mood and energy levels. Some stores actually diffuse citrus oils in the morning to increase customer alertness. Not only does it make the environment feel cleaner, but it can subtly encourage people to spend more time browsing. Now, beyond mood, scent also has a strong connection to memory, and not just in a nostalgic way. Because of how tightly scent is wired to the hippocampus, which plays a key role in memory consolidation, certain smells can actually enhance memory performance. In one experiment, students who were exposed to the scent of rosemary while studying and again during a test performed better than those who weren't. The scent created a kind of sensory context cue that helped their brains retrieve the information more easily. This ties into something called context-dependent memory, the idea that we remember things better when the environment during recall matches the environment during learning. So when scent becomes part of that environment, it acts like a trigger. Decision-making is another area where scent shows up quietly but powerfully. Research in retail psychology has found that ambient scent can influence what and how much people buy. For example, one study showed that customers in a store with a subtle scent of fresh cookies spent more time browsing and were more likely to buy impulse items. Another found that the smell of lavender in a waiting area made people more patient and tolerant of delays. There's even evidence suggesting that people rate others as more trustworthy when a room is scented with something pleasant. So yeah, scent might be affecting your judgment of people and places before you've even said a word. In office spaces, healthcare environments, schools, and even virtual reality, scent is being intentionally used to enhance focus, improve emotional regulation, and reduce cognitive fatigue. It's a form of low-effort sensory design that works quietly in the background, helping shape our experience without needing our active attention. But what's really interesting is how subtle this all is. The goal isn't to overwhelm with strong fragrances. In fact, that can backfire and feel artificial. The most effective use of scent is ambient, soft, natural, and just noticeable enough to shift your state without distracting you. So whether it's boosting cognitive performance with rosemary oil in a study space, lowering stress with lavender in a bedroom, or using eucalyptus in a spa to support breathing and calm the nervous system, ambient scent is a simple but powerful tool, one that directly plugs into the emotional wiring of the brain and quietly shapes how we think and feel throughout the day. And most of the time, we don't even realize it's happening. Color psychology. You ever walk into a room and instantly feel calm? Or maybe you've entered a space that somehow just made you feel on edge, and you weren't even sure why. Chances are it wasn't just the furniture or the layout. It was the color. See, colors aren't just pretty to look at. They carry emotional weight. Your brain doesn't just see them, it feels them, and often it reacts before you even realize it. This is what we call color psychology, the way different colors in our environment can influence how we feel, think, and even how we behave. And it's not just theory. There's actual science behind it. Let's start with the basics. Colors are processed in a part of your brain called the visual cortex, but the emotional reaction, that happens in the limbic system, the part responsible for memory, emotions, and motivation. So when your eyes pick up a color, your brain doesn't just catalog it. It connects it to feelings, experiences, instincts, sometimes even past memories. Let's go through a few of the main players. Blue, calm, stable, focused. Blue is like a mental deep breath. It's often used in bedrooms, meditation rooms, or places where the goal is clarity and stillness. It actually has a lowering effect on blood pressure and heart rate. That's why it's one of the most popular choices for offices. It helps with concentration and mental clarity. But too much blue or the wrong shade can feel cold or distant, so balance is key. Green, nature, harmony, balance. Green is psychologically connected to growth, rejuvenation, and even creativity. It reminds our brain of nature. Forests, grass, fresh beginnings. In workspaces or study areas, green can reduce mental fatigue and promote a sense of renewal. That's why you'll see it in places like therapy offices or wellness centers. It's a healing color, like a reset button. Yellow, energy, optimism, focus. Yellow is attention-grabbing. It stimulates the nervous system and encourages mental activity. It's the color of sunlight and joy, but also one of the hardest colors for the eyes to process in large amounts. Small doses can boost energy and mood, but too much yellow, especially bright neon tones, can actually increase anxiety or restlessness. It's best used as an accent, not a flood. Red, intensity, passion, urgency. Red is a physiological stimulant. It raises your heart rate, boosts adrenaline, and creates a sense of alertness. That's why it's often used in gyms, fast food places, or retail environments that want you to make quick decisions. It's powerful, but can also feel overwhelming. In homes, soft reds or burgundies can add warmth, but intense red might make a space feel aggressive or tense if overused. Purple, luxury, introspection, creativity. Purple has historically been associated with royalty, spirituality, and mystery. It's a blend of calming blue and energizing red, making it a fascinating middle ground for creative or reflective spaces. In deeper shades, it can feel moody and sophisticated. In lighter tones, like lavender, it becomes soothing and tranquil. Black, power, elegance, depth. In small doses, black can ground a space. It gives a sense of authority and sophistication, but too much, it can feel heavy or isolating. It's a psychological cue for depth, seriousness, and sometimes mourning. Used wisely, though, black adds contrast and clarity. White, simplicity, space, purity. White is often associated with cleanliness and openness. It can make a space feel larger, airier. But too much stark white, it can feel sterile, like a hospital. That's why layering it with warm tones or textures can make it more welcoming. It's a blank canvas, calming when balanced, but cold when overdone. And of course, we can't forget about color combinations. It's not just the colors themselves, but how they interact. A soft green next to warm beige can feel natural and relaxing. Red next to black, suddenly it's bold and dramatic. Blue and white, clean and crisp. Colors talk to each other, and they send signals to your brain whether you realize it or not. So what does this mean for your environment? It means that the colors you surround yourself with are always influencing how you feel. If your room feels stressful and you can't explain why, check the color palette. Too many sharp contrasts, overly bright tones, maybe too much cool light bouncing off white walls. Little adjustments can have a big psychological impact. And it's not about following a design rulebook. It's about tuning into how you respond emotionally. You don't have to be an artist or an interior designer to feel color. Your brain already does that for you. So next time you're choosing a paint color or even picking out a new mug or blanket, ask yourself, how does this make me feel? Because colors are more than decoration. They're part of your emotional environment. And when you choose them intentionally, you can create spaces that don't just look beautiful, they feel like home. Virtual environments and mental health. Now let's step into a world that doesn't technically exist, but feels real enough to change how we think, feel, and even heal. I'm talking about virtual environments. Whether it's the immersive world of VR, the cozy digital corners of a video game, or just the vibe of a calming app on your phone, the digital spaces we spend time in have a surprisingly deep impact on our mental and emotional health. Now, you might be thinking, okay, sure, I know games can be fun and VR is cool, but how can that possibly affect my mental state? Well, here's the wild part. Your brain doesn't actually care if something is real or virtual. What matters is the experience you're having, the sensory input, the emotions it triggers, and the meaning your mind attaches to it. Let's take VR, virtual reality, as a starting point. It's not just for gamers anymore. In fact, psychologists and researchers are using VR to help treat everything from anxiety and PTSD to phobias, depression, and even chronic pain. Here's how it works. Virtual environments can be carefully designed to mimic real-world scenarios in a safe, controlled way. So if someone has a fear of heights, they might be placed in a VR simulation where they gradually walk near a cliff edge, not in real life, but in a convincingly immersive digital world. The person's body still responds, heart rate increases, palms get sweaty, the brain says, "Whoa, danger." But they're completely safe. Over time, this exposure can help retrain the brain, reduce the fear response, and build emotional resilience. That's called exposure therapy, and VR is turning it into something way more powerful and effective. Now, beyond therapy, virtual environments can also offer emotional escape. And let's be honest, in today's world, sometimes you just need a break. Virtual spaces let us step out of the chaos of real life and into a place that's calm, quiet, and under our control. Whether it's a peaceful 3D forest in VR, a guided meditation app, or even a cozy digital art game, these experiences give us a kind of mental reset. That's because in virtual environments, we can design calm. We can create worlds that soothe the senses, lower our stress levels, and invite deep rest. And your brain, it responds just like it would in the real world. For example, one study showed that people who spent just 15 minutes in a virtual nature environment, complete with trees, water sounds, and birds, experienced measurable drops in anxiety, blood pressure, and cortisol levels. Just like real nature, except they never left the room. Now, let's talk about immersion for a second. Immersion isn't just about visuals. It's about how completely a space captures your attention. In VR, or even just a well-designed app or digital space, you can get so pulled in that the outside world fades away. This focused, immersive state is actually really beneficial for mental health. It helps reduce rumination. You know, those repetitive, nagging thoughts that can fuel anxiety and depression. When you're immersed in a digital experience, your mind isn't bouncing around anymore. It's present. It's engaged. And that state of present moment awareness, that's a big part of what mindfulness and meditation are all about. And here's where it gets even more exciting. Customization. In virtual environments, you can create exactly the kind of space that supports your emotional needs. Want a glowing sunset sky with floating lanterns and soft piano music? You got it. Prefer a rainy forest with distant thunder and gentle wind? Easy. That level of control allows people to design their own therapy, to build digital spaces that feel safe, comforting, and deeply personal. This is especially important for people who might not feel safe or relaxed in their real-world environments. Virtual spaces can offer a sense of safety, agency, and comfort that might be hard to find elsewhere. Even just playing a calm, cozy video game can help. Games like Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, or Journey. Those are more than just entertainment. For many, they've become mental health lifelines. These gentle, low-pressure digital worlds offer connection, purpose, beauty, and a break from stress, all within a safe digital cocoon. But, and there's always a but, it's important to talk about balance, because as helpful as virtual environments can be, too much screen time or isolation in digital spaces can lead to its own problems. Things like digital fatigue, sleep disruption, or social withdrawal can creep in if we're not mindful. The goal isn't to escape real life, but to use virtual tools in a healthy, supportive way. And that's where the future gets really exciting. As technology grows, we're seeing more apps, VR experiences, and digital environments being designed specifically to support mental health. Think guided VR meditation rooms, stress relief apps with ambient soundscapes, even AI-powered therapy sessions in virtual clinics. It's a whole new frontier, and it's giving people more control over their mental space than ever before. So if you've ever found comfort in a soothing game, or felt calmer after wandering through a peaceful VR forest, or focused better with a digital ambient room playing in the background, that's not just in your head. That's your brain responding to the environment. Even if it's not made of bricks and trees, because your environment doesn't have to be physical to be powerful. Sometimes, the most healing space is the one you step into with a headset, or a pair of headphones, or even just your imagination, virtual or real. What matters is how it makes you feel. Cognitive mapping. Ever gotten lost in a new city, but somehow knew which direction to walk, even without GPS? Or walked through your house in total darkness without bumping into a single thing? That's cognitive mapping in action. Your brain's built-in navigation system quietly doing its job behind the scenes. And honestly, it's kind of genius. So, what exactly is cognitive mapping? It's the mental process we use to take in, organize, and recall spatial information, like where things are, how to get from one point to another, or how places connect. It's not a literal map in your head, like Google Maps. It's more like an internal sketch, constantly updating based on what you see, hear, and experience as you move through the world. And get this, you're building this map without even realizing it. Every time you turn down a street, walk through a hallway, or look around a room, your brain is storing spatial relationships, directions, distances, and landmarks like breadcrumbs. But here's where it gets fascinating. We don't all build the same kind of maps. Some people are landmark navigators. They remember places based on what they saw, like turn left at the coffee shop, then right after the blue house. Others rely on more abstract directions. Go north 2 blocks, then west. There's even research that suggests men are more likely to use directional cues, all like cardinal directions, while women tend to focus more on landmarks. Of course, that's not universal, but it does show how personal and variable cognitive mapping can be. Now let's talk about what actually happens in the brain. The heavy lifting is done by the hippocampus, which plays a big role in memory and spatial reasoning. In fact, in a study of London taxi drivers, who have to memorize an enormous web of city streets, researchers found that their hippocampi were physically larger than average. Their brains literally adapted to store all that spatial data. That's how flexible and powerful cognitive mapping is. But it's not just for extreme cases like taxi drivers. Your brain's doing it all the time, whether you're navigating your office, walking to school, or figuring out where the bathroom is at a restaurant. It's also tied deeply to memory. Ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you went in there? That might sound like a brain fog thing, but spatial context plays a big role. Your brain links actions to specific places, and when you leave that environment, sometimes the intention doesn't travel with you. That's called the doorway effect, and it's all part of how we mentally map space and tasks. Cognitive maps are also emotional maps. They don't just store where things are. They store how we feel about those places. You might avoid a certain hallway at school because you had a bad experience there, or feel calm in a particular corner of a cafe because it's where you always sit to read. Your mental map doesn't just log distances and turns. It logs memories, moods, even vibes. Over time, it creates a rich emotional landscape layered over your physical world. This is why layout and design matter so much in environments like hospitals, airports, schools, or even retail stores. When a space is confusing or disorienting, say, a hospital with endless identical hallways and no natural light, people feel lost, stressed, and anxious. But when a space is intuitive, with clear signage, landmarks, and visual flow, people navigate more easily and feel more at ease. They're not just responding to the space. They're building a cleaner cognitive map of it. This is also one of the big challenges in virtual environments. In real life, you have depth cues, peripheral vision, and physical movement to help you build maps. But in digital spaces, like VR or even video games, those cues can be limited or unnatural. Developers actually have to design environments with cognitive mapping in mind, making sure players or users don't feel disoriented or stuck. On a day-to-day level, cognitive mapping helps us feel grounded and oriented. It gives us a sense of where we are in the world, and that's actually super important for psychological stability. When we don't have that, when we're dropped into an unfamiliar environment with no familiar anchors, we feel a weird kind of tension. Like we're not in control. Our brains start scrambling to build a map, to find landmarks, to get our bearings. And until that happens, we feel slightly off. This is why frequent moving, relocation, or even just commuting through a confusing route every day can feel mentally exhausting. Not because it's hard in a physical sense, but because your brain has to constantly rebuild or adjust your cognitive map. Now here's the kicker: these maps fade if we don't use them. Ever revisit a place you haven't been in years and feel like you don't remember the layout at all? That's your brain pruning an unused map. Out of sight, out of mind. Literally. So the more we engage with our surroundings, take different routes, explore new paths, pay attention to details, the sharper our spatial awareness stays. It's also why people who walk or bike tend to have stronger spatial awareness than those who drive everywhere. They're more engaged with the environment, noticing turns, textures, changes in elevation, and visual markers. They're building richer maps. And finally, cognitive mapping isn't just about navigation. It's about orientation, knowing where you are, where you've been, and where you're going. That applies physically, emotionally, even philosophically. Because when your surroundings make sense, when you can picture your world and place yourself inside it, something in your brain relaxes. You feel anchored, confident, a little more in control. So next time you catch yourself intuitively knowing how to get somewhere, or remembering the way a space made you feel. That's your cognitive map doing its thing. And trust me, it's one of the most underrated superpowers you have. Environmental perception. Okay, so picture this. Two people walk into the same room. One says, "Wow, this place is peaceful." The other, "This place feels weird." Same lighting, same furniture, same air. So, what changed? The answer: perception. Environmental perception is all about how we interpret our surroundings. Not just what's there physically, but how our brains make sense of it. And what's really fascinating is it's not universal. It's personal. See, the environment isn't just something outside of us. It's something we're constantly interpreting, scanning, decoding, assigning meaning to. Based on memory, culture, mood, and even what happened 5 minutes ago. Let's break it down. You walk into a dimly lit hallway. If you've just watched a horror movie, your brain might whisper, "Creepy." But if you've been to an art gallery with that same kind of lighting, you might think, "Sophisticated." Same space. Totally different emotional response. Why? Because your past experience colors the way you interpret the present. And it's not just about light. It's everything. The smells, the sounds, the materials, even how furniture is arranged. Your brain is a pattern-recognizing machine, and when it encounters a space, it immediately goes, "Do I know this feeling? Is this place safe? Inviting? Cold familiar?" That's environmental perception at work. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Your current mental state also shapes perception in real time. Feeling anxious. You're more likely to interpret neutral spaces as threatening. Feeling calm. You'll give a place the benefit of the doubt. This is backed by some pretty cool neuroscience. Studies using fMRI scans show that the amygdalas, the fear and emotional processing centered, and the hippocampus, which handles memory, light up when people explore unfamiliar environments, especially when those environments are ambiguous. Basically, your brain pulls from past emotional files to decide how to feel in a place. So if your childhood home smelled like vanilla and had warm lighting, you might still feel safe in places with that same vibe, even as an adult, even if you don't consciously connect the dots. But perception isn't just emotional. It also affects how we behave. If a space feels cozy, we linger. If a hallway feels long and narrow, we speed up. If a room feels off, we avoid it, even if we can't explain why. That's why good design matters, not just visually, but psychologically. When environments are designed with perception in mind, they can guide behavior without ever saying a word. Hospitals, for example, often use soft colors and rounded edges in waiting rooms to reduce perceived stress. Retail stores manipulate lighting, layout, even scent, all to shift perception in a way that encourages you to relax, explore, and yes, buy. Even things like ceiling height influence how we think. Higher ceilings tend to make people feel more creative and free thinking. Lower ceilings can feel cozier or claustrophobic, depending on the context. But remember, there's no one size fits all. Culture plays a huge role too. In some cultures, bright colors and tight spaces feel lively and energizing. In others, minimalism and open areas create peace. Your brain's been trained by your surroundings your whole life. So what feels normal to one person might feel wrong to someone else. Here's an example in Japan. Silence in public spaces like trains or waiting rooms is normal and respectful. In other cultures, that same silence might feel awkward or tense. Same environment, different perceptions. And here's something to really think about. Your identity can shape perception too. A space might feel safe to one person and threatening to another, based on race, gender, ability, or past experiences. That's why inclusive design is becoming such a big topic, because how we perceive a space isn't just about aesthetics, it's about access, comfort, and dignity. So, what does this all mean for you? Sitting here, breathing slow, maybe drifting a little. It means how you feel in a space isn't random. It's learned. It's shaped. It's emotional. And it's changeable. Just like you can reframe your thoughts, you can begin to reframe your surroundings. Notice how certain spaces affect your mood. What rooms energize you? What places drain you? What sounds help you focus? What lighting makes you feel safe? These aren't superficial questions. They're part of understanding how your brain interacts with the world. And the more aware you are of your own perception, the more you can build environments, even tiny ones, that support your mental well-being. A cozy corner with soft light, a desk setup that makes you feel inspired, a bit of natural texture or greenery in an otherwise gray space. These aren't decorations. They're messages to your nervous system, and they matter. Not just what's in it, but how you see it, because perception, that's the lens through which your entire life gets filtered. And you, you, get to shape the lens. Place attachment. There are some places you never forget, not because of how they looked, but because of how they made you feel. That old bedroom in your childhood home, the park bench where you used to sit and think, even a favorite coffee shop where everything just felt right. That feeling, it's called place attachment. It's the emotional bond you form with certain spaces, and it runs deeper than we usually give it credit for. This isn't just nostalgia. It's not just memory. It's your brain forming a psychological connection between environment and identity. So how does that happen? Well, it's a mix of experience, meaning, and memory. When you spend time in a place, especially during important moments, your brain starts linking that physical space to the emotions you felt there. Let's say you spent years studying in the same corner of the library. That corner becomes more than just a spot with a desk and a lamp. It becomes a symbol of focus, growth, even personal achievement. Or maybe your grandparents' house. The smell of the kitchen, the creak in the hallway. Those sensory details become anchors. And suddenly, stepping into that space makes you feel safe, even decades later. Psychologists break place attachment into a few layers: personal experience, when a place is part of your story; social bonds, when a space holds shared memories with people you care about; cultural or symbolic meaning, when a place reflects your values, identity, or community. What's wild is how powerful this attachment can be. Studies show that people with strong place attachment report higher well-being, greater resilience, and even better mental health. Why? Because place becomes a source of emotional grounding, especially during times of stress or change. It's like having a mental home base, a place that says, "You belong here." Now, this connection doesn't have to be to a big place, like a city or a house. It could be something small. A tree you walked past every day. A spot on the floor where your pet used to nap. It's not about size. It's about meaning. And here's the interesting twist: place attachment can also cause emotional distress. When we lose access to those meaningful places, people who've had to leave their homes due to relocation, disaster, or gentrification often experience grief-like symptoms. It's called displacement stress, and it's real. Because when you're pulled away from a place that holds part of your identity, it's like losing a piece of yourself. That's why refugees often hold tightly to tokens or memories from their hometowns, not just as souvenirs, but as anchors of who they are. And even for the rest of us, moving away from a meaningful space, even voluntarily, can cause emotional whiplash. You might feel disconnected, unsettled, like you're floating without a center. That's your brain craving that emotional geography it was used to. But there's also good news. We have the ability to form new attachments. It just takes time, intentionality, and experience, which is why personalization is such a powerful tool. When you move into a new space and start adding your touches, photos, colors, scents, routines, you're not just decorating. You're planting emotional seeds. You're telling your brain, this is part of your story now. And this is where rituals come in. Drinking your morning tea in the same spot, lighting a candle when you're about to relax. Those small, repeated actions start to embed meaning into space. And little by little, you begin to feel attached. So what can you take away from all of this? If you've ever felt like your environment doesn't feel like you, you're probably just missing that emotional link. You haven't had time, experience, or enough moments in it to form attachment yet. But the cool part, you can create it. Surround yourself with things that represent you. Carve out spaces for rest, creativity, or connection. Let your environment reflect who you are and who you're becoming. Because our emotional connection to space isn't just a side note. It's a core part of how we build identity, feel grounded, and find meaning in the everyday. We don't just live in places. Places live in us. Climate change anxiety. You ever scroll through the news and just stop mid-swipe thinking, wait, is this how it all ends? One post talks about heat records being shattered. The next is about a disappearing glacier. And then you see a video of a wildfire raging somewhere that looks way too familiar. And suddenly, it's not just about the planet. It's about your future. That creeping unease that kicks in. That's climate change anxiety. And it's way more common than people think. It's not some dramatic overreaction. It's a psychological response to something very real, the looming threat of climate instability. Scientists call it eco-anxiety, and no, it's not just about being sad over the environment. It's about that deep down, hard to ignore fear that our way of life might be standing on shaky ground. And here's the kicker, this isn't just a vague, future-based worry. People are feeling this right now. In 2021, a massive study surveyed 10,000 young people across 10 countries. Over 75% said they were frightened about the future, and nearly 60% said governments weren't protecting the planet or them. Some even said they don't want to have kids because of how bleak things feel. That's not just worry. That's existential. So why does climate change hit our mental health so hard? First, there's the uncertainty. Human brains are wired to prepare for danger. But how do you prep for something that unfolds slowly, globally, and without a clear endpoint? You can't outrun rising sea levels. You can't just turn off the temperature rise. It's too big to fight and too real to ignore. Second, there's guilt. Like, yeah, you might use a reusable bottle and take shorter showers, but then you see stats about how 100 companies are responsible for over 70% of global emissions, and you think, what's the point? That disconnect between personal responsibility and systemic failure. It's maddening. Then comes helplessness. You want to help, but it feels like yelling into a void. And every time you start to hope, maybe a new policy, a new breakthrough, something else breaks down, gets reversed, or just gets worse. That emotional cocktail, fear, guilt, helplessness, is heavy. And when it's left unaddressed, it can mess with your head. We're talking trouble sleeping, panic attacks, trouble focusing, avoidance behaviors, like steering clear of news entirely, hopelessness and depression. It's not just emotional. It becomes physical. Constant stress activates your body's cortisol response, keeping you in a state of fight or flight. Over time, that kind of chronic stress can wear you down mentally, emotionally, even biologically. But what makes this even more complicated is that climate change anxiety doesn't hit everyone the same. If you live in an area that's already experiencing the effects, flooding, drought, air quality issues, it's not theoretical. It's personal. It's your home, your safety, your daily reality. And if you're part of a community that's historically been underserved or ignored, those climate-related risks are often amplified. So eco-anxiety isn't just about worrying. It's also about justice, or the lack of it. Still, here's something you might not hear enough. Anxiety is a signal. It's your mind and body saying, hey, something's not right, and it matters. In a weird way, feeling anxious about the planet is proof that you care, that you're aware, that you're engaged. And even though this whole thing can feel crushing, there are ways to carry that weight without letting it bury you. Start by reframing the anxiety. Instead of seeing it as a paralyzing force, see it as motivation. That worry can be fuel. It can push you to act, not just on a personal level, but collectively. Real change has always come from pressure, from people pushing, from communities demanding better. Next, take real, local action. Get involved with sustainability efforts in your area. Support clean energy initiatives. Volunteer. These things sound small, but psychologically they're massive. They give you a sense of control, and control is key to managing anxiety. Also, talk about it. Seriously, talk to friends, family, coworkers. Normalize it. Because the more you pretend it doesn't bother you, the bigger it gets. But when people share that anxiety, it creates connection. And connection is an antidote to isolation. Finally, don't forget to unplug. Not from the issue, but from the overload. The constant stream of climate headlines can wear you down. Give yourself permission to pause, to go outside, to reconnect with nature. Not out of fear, but out of love for it. Let that be your reason for staying engaged, not your source of panic. Because here's the truth, the planet's future is uncertain, but our response doesn't have to be. Yes, climate change anxiety is real, but so is climate hope, and between the two, that's where action lives. Proxemics. Have you ever taken a step back, literally, when someone stood too close to you in line? Or maybe you've leaned in a little more during a good conversation without even thinking about it. That, right there, is proxemics in action. It's the study of how humans use space, especially in social situations, and how different physical distances carry different psychological meanings. Now you might be thinking, wait, so distance has psychology? Yup, and it's wild how much it shapes our interactions, without us even realizing it. The term proxemics was coined by anthropologist Edward T. Hall in the 1960s. He basically laid out a whole system that explains how we subconsciously manage personal space, and how different cultures treat that space very differently. Let's break it down. Hall defined 4 main spatial zones that we tend to move between: depending on our relationship with the person we're interacting with. Intimate distance 0 to 18 inches. This is reserved for people we're very close to, partners, family, maybe your toddler crawling all over you. Personal distance 1.54 feet, friends, casual conversations, people we feel comfortable with. Social distance I-4 12 feet, acquaintances, coworkers, formal interactions. Think networking events or business meetings. Public distance 12 feet and beyond, lectures, performances, or talking to a group. It's when you're not expecting any close interaction. Now here's where it gets interesting. Those distances aren't universal. In the US, personal space is a big deal. People like to keep a buffer. If someone stands too close at a coffee shop, it feels intrusive. But in many Middle Eastern, Latin American, or Mediterranean cultures, that same distance might be totally normal, even warm or polite. What feels respectful in one culture might feel cold in another. What feels friendly in one environment could feel uncomfortable somewhere else. So when we talk about proxemics, we're not just talking about space. We're talking about comfort, identity, trust, and culture. Let me give you a quick example. Imagine you're at a party. You're talking to someone, and they keep inching closer. You keep subtly backing up. They keep stepping forward. It turns into this weird unspoken dance, and neither of you really knows why. That's a proxemic mismatch. Your internal, safe distance doesn't align with theirs. It's not personal. It's just a learned spatial expectation, and when it's violated, your brain triggers discomfort or alertness. And yeah, your brain is paying attention. There's neuroscience behind this. When our personal space is invaded, especially by someone we don't trust or know well, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, lights up. You might not consciously panic, but your body gets the message, something's off, and that impacts your ability to focus, relax, or even think clearly in that space. Now think about how this plays out in real-world environments. Ever wonder why waiting rooms often have chairs spaced a certain way? Or why subway riders instinctively avoid sitting right next to someone if there are open seats? It's about negotiating personal space in shared environments. It's subtle, but extremely powerful. Even architecture responds to proxemics. Open floor plans, cozy coffee shop corners, classroom layouts. All of it either encourages or discourages proximity and therefore certain types of social interaction. A circular seating arrangement promotes equality and eye contact. Rows of desks point attention toward one person. Authority. Cubicles give you a barrier, a sense of psychological ownership over your space. And open plan offices. Well, those are controversial for a reason. Some people thrive in them. Others feel overstimulated and exposed. So much of that reaction comes down to proxemic preferences. And here's the kicker. It's not just cultural or biological. It's also situational. Your comfort zone might shrink around close friends and expand in a tense meeting. You might crave closeness in a support group and need distance on a crowded train. The physical environment can either support or clash with those needs. And when it clashes too often, that's when psychological stress kicks in. That's why good designers, architects, and urban planners always think about social ergonomics, how space is used by real people in real interactions. And it's why virtual spaces are now playing catch up. Even in video calls, we've started mimicking proxemics, backing up from the webcam when we need distance, leaning in when we want to connect, arranging virtual meeting grids to make eye contact feel more natural. Because at the end of the day, Personal space isn't just about feet and inches. It's about emotional comfort, relational dynamics, and how humans signal trust, power, interest, or withdrawal, all through space. So the next time someone steps a little too close, or you find yourself inching away, you're not being weird. You're just practicing proxemics. Your brain's silent way of saying, "This is my bubble. Please don't pop it." Consumer behavior and environmental design. All right, imagine you're walking into your favorite store. Maybe it's a cozy little boutique or a massive shopping mall. But as soon as you step inside, you feel something. The lighting's different. The lighting's softer. The music's just right. And the layout. It invites you in. You're not just browsing. You're experiencing the space. That's not a coincidence. It's environmental design at work, and it's influencing your every decision. Now, this isn't just about aesthetics. It's about psychology. Retailers have spent decades studying how our brains react to different environmental cues. And what they've learned is that everything about the way a space is designed, from the color of the walls to the placement of products to the music playing in the background, can influence your buying behavior in ways you may not even be aware of. Let's start with lighting. Think about it. When you walk into a brightly lit store, everything feels a little harsher, right? Like you're seeing the products for exactly what they are. No distractions, no warmth. But when that lighting dims just a little, suddenly it's more inviting. It's warm. It feels more comfortable. And your brain starts to relax. You might even start to look around for longer, to explore more. It's simple, warm lighting comfort. Bright, sterile lighting alert, functional. Now, think about how much space there is in the store. Is it open and airy? Or is it packed with shelves and products right up to the edge? That open, spacious feel. It makes you feel like you've got room to breathe, room to think. You're not rushed. You're at ease to browse at your own pace. That's the kind of design that encourages exploration. It's why high-end stores like Apple or Rolex often have wide-open spaces and minimalist displays. They want you to feel like you're making a choice, not being pressured. On the flip side, crowded stores with narrow aisles or stacked shelves, they can subtly stress you out. Your brain starts thinking, "I need to hurry. I need to make decisions fast." You're more likely to buy something just to get out of the environment. This is all about creating a mental state that nudges you toward action. When a space feels comfortable and spacious, you're likely to stay longer and think you're making the decision on your own. But when a store feels cramped, that stress pushes you toward quick decisions, often based on urgency or impulse. Then there's the music. Ever notice how music is almost always playing in the background? But not just any music. Stores use sound strategically. Think about it. Fast-paced, upbeat music. It makes you move quicker. You're likely to browse faster, grab things off the shelf, and head to checkout. It's all about creating a sense of urgency. But what about slow, smooth jazz or ambient instrumental? That creates a relaxed atmosphere. You might take your time, linger around the aisles, even feel more indulged in your purchases. Retailers use tempo and genre to manipulate your time spent in the store. And, naturally, the more time you spend, the more likely you are to make a purchase. When you're relaxed, you feel more comfortable taking your time and more likely to consider bigger purchases or add-ons that you might not have intended to buy. Now, let's dive into color, a huge influence on your buying decisions. You ever wonder why so many stores use red or yellow in their signage? It's because those colors stimulate excitement and urgency. You'll often see them in discount promotions or clearance sales. Why? Because they grab your attention and signal action. Meanwhile, stores that want to make you feel calm or luxurious often use softer colors like blues, greens, or pastels. Think about the difference in vibe between a Target and a Whole Foods. Target's bright red tones are energetic, fast-paced, and retail-focused. Whole Foods, with its earthy tones and deep greens, creates a calm, more lifestyle-oriented vibe. These choices aren't just pretty, they subtly guide your mood and decisions. And here's a big one: the layout of the store. Ever notice that the best items are always in the back or at eye level? Why's that? It's because retailers want you to walk through the entire space to see everything. And as you move through the store, you're likely to pick up things along the way. In fact, decoy items are placed at strategic spots to make other products look even more attractive, whether it's a sale sign or a new arrival. This encourages anchoring. The idea that once you've seen something priced higher, other items will seem like better deals. But it's not just about the layout. It's about perception of space. A store that's open and flowing feels like there's more value. You see product placement, shelves at eye level, items spaced out with room to breathe, and your brain starts thinking, this space respects my time, my choices. It's designed to make you feel like you're not rushed, like you have space to decide. This manipulation of space. It's no accident. Retail therapy is a real thing. The way a store looks, its design, its ambience, has a direct impact on your emotional state, your stress levels, and your willingness to buy. It's an entire psychological landscape built to make you feel like you've made the right decision, even when your credit card is a little lighter than expected. Next time you find yourself walking through your favorite store, take a moment to pay attention to what's around you. Feel the way the lighting, the music, the colors, and even the layout affect your mood. Because whether you realize it or not, these little cues are shaping your decisions more than you think. So as you keep drifting off in this soundscape, remember your environment, from the shopping mall to the cozy bookstore, is never just a backdrop. It's a story, a narrative that guides you towards certain decisions. And if you know how to read it, you can start to make smarter, more mindful choices. Who knew shopping could be so psychological, right? Sensory overload in modern environments. Okay, let's be real for a second. Have you ever walked into a crowded space? Flashing lights, loud music, people talking over each other, and instantly felt like your brain was short-circuiting. That, my friend, is sensory overload. And in today's world, it's kind of become our default. Modern environments, especially in cities or online, are throwing so much at our senses all the time that our brains are just exhausted. Bright screens, buzzing phones, non-stop notifications, car horns, conversations, advertisements everywhere. It's like we're constantly swimming in a sea of stimulation. And even if we're not fully aware of it, our brains are burning serious energy trying to keep up. Here's the deal. Our brains evolved to handle sensory input at the scale of a quiet forest, not a Times Square billboard or a TikTok feed that changes every second. So when the environment keeps hitting us with sound, light, movement, and information all at once, it triggers something called cognitive load. That just means too much input, not enough bandwidth. Now, let's break this down a bit. There are 5 classic senses we all know: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. But in modern life, those senses are often overwhelmed. Visually, we're overstimulated with screens, notifications, fast edits in video content, scrolling news, flashing ads, and digital clutter. Auditorily, we deal with constant background noise, traffic, sirens, music playing in stores, loud conversations, podcasts, videos playing even when we think it's just background. Our brain is still processing it. And then there's touch. Think of the overstimulation from tight clothes, vibrating phones, crowded trains, or just the need to always be holding or doing something. All of this constant sensory input adds up to what scientists call sensory processing fatigue. Your brain is working overtime just to filter what's important from what's not. And the more time we spend in environments that demand this constant filtering, the more likely we are to feel mentally drained, anxious, irritable, or just completely zoned out. Sound familiar? It's the reason why you might feel fine at the start of the day, but after a full day of screens, traffic, and noise, you're toast. It's not that you did something physically exhausting, your brain is just overloaded. Let's take urban environments as an example. Cities are rich with culture, opportunity, and energy, but they're also sensory minefields. Studies have shown that people living in dense urban areas tend to have higher cortisol levels, which is a biological marker for stress. Why? Because cities bombard us with unpredictable sounds, crowds, flashing signs, traffic congestion, and a lack of quiet space. And that chronic stimulation keeps the fight or flight system humming in the background. And it's not just noise or crowds. Even something as subtle as visual clutter, too many colors, patterns, and movements in your field of view, can spike stress levels and impair your ability to concentrate. Then, there's digital sensory overload, probably the most familiar one for all of us. With smartphones, we're exposed to more information in a day than someone 100 years ago might have processed in a year. Our brains are not built for this, and they react by fatiguing faster, focusing less, and craving constant novelty, which ironically creates a loop of even more overload. Ever felt that digital hangover after binge, watching a show, doom-scrolling social media, or flipping between tabs for hours? That's sensory overload too. Your attention system is fried, your memory is scattered, and your mind feels like mush. That's your brain crying out for rest. So what does this mean for your mental health? When we're in constant overload mode, we're more likely to experience decision fatigue, struggle with short-term memory, feel emotionally numb or overstimulated, become more reactive to minor frustrations, and even experience sleep disruption. Because the nervous system doesn't know when to wind down. Basically, we become less ourselves, more scattered, more tired, less grounded. But here's the good news. You can train your brain to recover from sensory overload, and even design your environment to prevent it. It starts with something called sensory hygiene. That means being intentional about reducing sensory input where possible. Think turning off unnecessary notifications, using noise, canceling headphones, adding visual simplicity to your space, taking tech-free breaks, spending time in low-stimulation environments like parks, libraries, or even just a quiet room with natural light. And speaking of nature, it's kind of the ultimate antidote to sensory overload. Natural environments offer restorative stimulation, sights, sounds, and textures that don't demand your attention, but gently engage it. Things like rustling leaves, soft bird sounds, flowing water. They help calm the nervous system and restore mental clarity. This is also why ambient soundscapes, like the ones in this video, are so powerful. They're not just background noise. They're carefully crafted to create a soothing sensory atmosphere that supports mental rest, emotional balance, and cognitive reset. Because sometimes, what your brain needs most is a break from doing so much. So the next time you feel mentally scattered or emotionally fried, don't just push through it. Instead, ask yourself, what's overwhelming my senses right now? And how can I give my brain the space to breathe? Because in a world that never stops talking, sometimes the most healing thing you can do is turn down the volume. Lighting and mood. Okay, let's set the scene. You're in a room. The lights are warm, soft, almost like candlelight. Everything feels a little slower, a little quieter. Your body relaxes, your thoughts settle, and even your breathing shifts into something calm and steady. Now imagine the same room, but the lights are harsh, bright, bluish, like the kind you'd find in a big box store or a dentist's office. Suddenly, you're more alert, maybe a little agitated. You can feel your brain switching into work mode or stress mode. We don't always notice it, but lighting is powerful. It's not just about visibility. It's emotional. It's biological. It affects your mood, your energy levels, and even how you behave. Let's break it down. First, and this is a big one, light controls your circadian rhythm. That's your internal clock. The 24-hour cycle that tells your body when to feel awake and when to feel sleepy. When your eyes detect natural sunlight, especially in the morning, it triggers the release of cortisol, the hormone that makes you feel alert and focused. But when the sun goes down and the light gets warmer and dimmer, your brain starts producing melatonin, the hormone that helps you sleep. It's not just nature doing its thing. It's biology and modern lighting. It often disrupts that natural rhythm. Think about it, most of us spend our days indoors under artificial lighting that doesn't mimic natural sunlight. Then at night, we're surrounded by screens, phones, TVs, laptops, blasting blue light that confuses our brain into thinking it's still daytime. So what happens? We feel tired at the wrong times. We stay alert when we're supposed to be winding down. We struggle to fall asleep. Our moods dip. And over time, it starts to affect everything, from our ability to focus, to how much joy we feel in a day. Now let's talk about the temperature of light. No, not heat temperature, but color temperature. You've probably heard the terms warm light and cool light. Warm light, like candlelight or sunrise, has more orange and red tones. Cool light, like midday sun or many fluorescent bulbs, leans more toward blue. And guess what? Your brain responds to these differently. Warm lighting tends to make people feel relaxed, safe, and cozy. It's why restaurants and spas often use dim, golden tones. It lowers stress, encourages intimacy, and can even help reduce anxiety. On the flip side, cool lighting boosts alertness. It can make you feel more awake, sharper, which is great for productivity. That's why offices and schools often use bright white or blue toned lights. But too much of it, especially late in the day, can leave you feeling overstimulated and edgy. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Lighting also changes how you perceive a space emotionally. In one study published in the Journal of Environmental Psychology, people rated the same room very differently depending on how it was lit. Soft, warm lighting made the space feel more welcoming and comforting. Harsh, cold lighting made it feel clinical and uninviting. even though nothing else about the room changed. That same effect spills over into behavior. In retail settings, lighting can influence how long people stay, how much they engage with products, and even how generous or impulsive they feel. In restaurants, dim lighting makes people stay longer and linger over meals. In hospitals, brighter lighting can help patients feel more alert during the day, which improves healing. But too much can increase stress and reduce sleep quality. And in your home, lighting can literally set the tone for your day. Bright, natural light in the morning helps signal to your body that it's time to get going. Warm, soft light in the evening helps you wind down and signal to your brain that rest is coming. It's not just about function. It's about emotional signaling. Now here's something you might not expect. Lighting also plays a role in mental health. People who live in environments with low light, like parts of the world with long winters, often experience seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. It's a form of depression triggered by a lack of sunlight. The fix: light therapy, using lamps that mimic natural sunlight to reset your circadian rhythm and boost mood. Even for people without SAD, just getting exposure to morning light has been shown to improve mood, sleep quality, and overall well-being. That's how sensitive we are to light. It's a literal mood dial. And here's a quick tip. If you work indoors all day, try to sit near a window or take a walk in the sunlight, even for just 10 minutes. And in the evening, start dimming your lights. Use lamps instead of overheads. Switch your screens to warm mode. You'll be surprised how fast your body responds to that shift. Almost like it's been waiting for permission to relax. So the next time you walk into a room and something feels off, pay attention to the light. It might not be the space itself. It might be the way it's lit. Too bright, too blue, too harsh, and your brain goes into stress mode. But soften it, warm it, adjust it, and suddenly everything feels more grounded, more you. Because lighting isn't just about seeing, it's about feeling. And when we light our spaces right, we're not just setting a vibe. We're shaping our mental state. Sound and noise pollution. You know that feeling when you're trying to focus. Maybe you're reading or working on something important. And then, bam, a car alarm goes off. Or someone slams a door. Or your neighbor starts blasting music at full volume. It's like your brain just stops. For a second, you can't think. Your focus shatters, your heart races, and suddenly, all you can think about is that noise. What just happened? That's the power of environmental noise. And the truth is, it's more than just annoying. It's actually changing your brain. When we talk about noise pollution, we're not just talking about the loud stuff, like honking horns or jackhammers, although, yeah, those are certainly part of the issue. We're talking about all the constant, low-level sounds we're exposed to every day. The hum of a refrigerator, the drone of traffic in the distance, the buzzing of fluorescent lights, the chatter of people in the background. It's all sound. And the thing is, your brain is always listening. Even when you're not consciously paying attention to it, your mind is processing that noise. And when you're surrounded by it for long periods, that processing takes a toll. So what happens? Let's start with cognition. The first thing you'll notice when exposed to constant noise is that your ability to focus begins to decline. Your attention span shortens. Your working memory, the mental, sticky notes, where you keep track of things, becomes less effective. Think about it. When you're trying to concentrate on something important, and there's a distracting noise, your brain has to switch gears. Instead of focusing on the task, it has to process the noise. Figure out whether it's important, whether it's dangerous, whether it needs your attention. The more noise there is, the more often your brain is distracted. A study from the Journal of Applied Psychology found that just the presence of ambient noise can impair creative problem solving. People exposed to noise performed worse in tasks that required focus and innovation. Your brain doesn't have the luxury of deep concentration when it's constantly trying to tune out external distractions. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. It's not just about attention. Noise can actually change how you feel. When you're exposed to loud or unpredictable noise, it triggers your sympathetic nervous system, the part of your brain responsible for fight or flight responses. It's the same system that gets activated when you're under stress. This means noise pollution can make you feel anxious, restless, or irritable, even if you're not consciously aware of it. It creates a constant sense of tension in the background of your life. Over time, this stress can lead to chronic feelings of unease, or worse, even mood disorders like depression or anxiety. And the problem is, we're rarely aware of how much noise is really affecting us. It becomes like white noise in our lives. We tune it out until it's unbearable. Ever notice how peaceful it feels when you go to a remote place? Maybe a forest or a quiet park. The stillness, the absence of constant noise, allows your body to relax. You don't realize how much tension you're holding until it's gone. So, what does all of this mean for our daily behavior? Well, consider the impact of noise on social interaction. If you're in a noisy environment, whether it's a crowded street or a busy coffee shop, it's harder to connect with others. People tend to feel more irritated and less patient. Conversations get short and clipped. Even small social exchanges can feel draining. A study in environment and behavior found that people living in noisy areas reported feeling less satisfied with their social relationships and more disconnected from their communities. The constant disruption makes it harder to communicate meaningfully. It's like the noise creates a barrier between you and the people around you. And here's something really interesting. Noise can even affect our decision-making. In a noisy environment, people are more likely to make impulsive decisions. For example, they might be quicker to buy something they don't need or make a snap judgment about a person without taking the time to fully process information. It's like the noise throws your internal compass off balance. This all comes back to stress. When we're stressed, our cognitive abilities suffer. We're more likely to make decisions based on emotion rather than logic, and that's when we're more likely to make mistakes. It's like your brain is trying to keep up with the noise, but it's too overwhelmed to think clearly. Now, let's bring this all back to how environmental noise affects you personally. If you've ever felt your mood dip after spending too much time in a loud, busy space, you've already experienced the power of sound pollution. It's not just an annoyance. It's impacting your cognitive functions, your mood, and your ability to interact with the world around you. The good news is, there are ways to fight back. You can manage your environment. Find places of quiet. Add soundproofing elements if you can. Use white noise or calming music to mask disruptive sounds. Consider noise-canceling headphones if you're in a noisy environment for long stretches. The important thing is to recognize how much sound is shaping your experience and your well-being, and start taking steps to reduce it. So, the next time you feel your stress levels rise or your focus slip, it might not be you. It might just be the noise around you. And now that you know how much power that sound has over your mind and body, you can start reclaiming a bit of that peace. Architectural psychology. Think about the last place that made you feel completely at ease. Maybe it was a cozy bookstore with soft corners and warm lighting, or a quiet library where everything felt structured, intentional, or maybe even a wide, open space. Lots of natural light, high ceilings, and just enough quiet to hear your own thoughts. That feeling, that comfort, clarity, even inspiration, it wasn't accidental. It was designed. This is where architectural psychology comes in, the study of how the physical structures around us shape how we feel, think, and behave. Not just what a building does, but how it affects us on a psychological level. We usually think of architecture in terms of aesthetics, right? What it looks like. But behind the shapes, materials, and layouts, there's something more powerful at play: how our brains respond to built environments. Let's break this down. One of the most impactful elements is space. Open layouts tend to foster freedom, collaboration, and creativity. They tell the brain, you've got room to breathe. But if a space is too open, without boundaries or cozy spots, it can actually make people feel exposed, vulnerable, or overwhelmed. So balance matters. We crave openness, but we also need a sense of containment and safety. That's why well-designed spaces give you zones. Areas that serve a psychological purpose, like quiet nooks for recharging and open spaces for interaction. Think of libraries with soft reading corners, or modern offices with breakout spaces that feel more like cafes than cubicles. And then there's ceiling height. Yep, even that affects your brain. In one study published in the journal Psychological Science, researchers found that people in rooms with high ceilings were more likely to think abstractly, creatively, while people in rooms with low ceilings were more focused and detail-oriented. So the vertical space above your head, it's literally shaping how you process information. But it's not just about the structure. It's also about flow, how easy it is to move through a space. Ever been in a building that just didn't make sense? Weird hallways, no natural light, strange dead ends. That kind of layout can lead to mental fatigue, frustration, and even anxiety. On the flip side, spaces with good flow, clear paths, visual anchors, natural light guiding your movement. They feel intuitive. They support the brain rather than challenge it. And then we get to materials and textures. Smooth concrete can feel cool, modern, minimal, but if it's overused, it can also feel cold, disconnected. Natural wood, it brings warmth, familiarity, organic softness. Stone can feel grounded, metal feels sleek, fabric softens. These textures send subtle messages to your nervous system. They either invite you in or push you out. But what about light and shadow? Architects use them like artists to shape experience. Natural light streaming through a skylight makes a room feel uplifting, even sacred. Soft shadows and diffused lighting create intimacy and calm. Sharp contrasts or over-lit spaces can create tension, literally causing your body to feel more alert or uneasy. All of this adds up to an important point. Our environments don't just reflect how we feel. They shape how we feel. Hospitals that integrate garden views and daylight see faster healing rates. Schools with natural light and smart design see better student focus and behavior. Homes with intentional space planning can reduce conflict, encourage rest, and even support better relationships. And here's something fascinating: architectural style, like modern vs traditional, can affect how connected people feel to a space. Traditional architecture, with familiar shapes, symmetry, and materials, often creates a sense of stability and belonging, while ultra-modern, abstract structures might impress visually. They can feel sterile or alienating if there's no warmth to balance them. That's why the best architects think like psychologists. They design not just for the eye, but for the emotional needs of the people moving through the space. Even something as small as window placement can shift your mood. A window that frames a tree, a skyline, or even the movement of clouds, that's visual therapy. It gives your mind a moment of soft focus, a break from pressure. And when you start to notice these things, the shape of a room, the way light hits a wall, the feel of materials under your hand, you begin to understand why some spaces feel good and others just don't. So what does this mean for you? It means you don't need to rebuild your house to shift your experience. Small choices matter. Rearrange furniture to improve flow. Add natural textures. Open the curtains. Create visual cues for rest, focus, or inspiration. You're not just decorating, you're designing for your mental well-being. Because architecture isn't just about buildings. It's about behavior, emotion, and the silent conversation between your body and the space around you. And once you tune into that, you start to see every wall, window, and ceiling not just as structure, but as something speaking to your state of mind. Psychological effects of crowding. You ever feel like the walls are closing in on you? Like there's just too many people, too much noise, and nowhere to escape? That feeling has a name. It's called crowding. And it's not just a physical thing, it's a psychological one. See, people often confuse crowding with density. But here's the difference. Density is how many people are packed into a space. Crowding is how that feels to you. You could be in a crowded festival and feel alive, or stuck in a busy office and feel like you're drowning. Same number of people, completely different psychological reaction. It's perception that makes the difference. And the truth is, when the environment feels too tight, our brains start to rebel. Let's break down why. First off, there's the stress response. When your personal space gets constantly invaded, someone brushing past you, too many conversations happening at once, people standing just a little too close, your brain sees that as a potential threat. It triggers the amygdala, which is like your internal alarm system, and that fires off stress hormones like cortisol. Your heart rate goes up, your patience goes down, and suddenly you're way more reactive than you were 5 minutes ago. Now imagine this happening day after day, in your home, your job, your commute. That's how crowding becomes a chronic stressor, and long-term stress is no joke. It's been linked to anxiety, depression, trouble sleeping, and even issues with memory. In fact, studies in environmental psychology have shown that people living in overcrowded housing tend to report higher levels of psychological distress, even when you factor in things like income or family size. It's not just discomfort, it's mental health. But it's not only your emotions that take a hit. Your ability to think clearly does too. In crowded spaces, your brain is constantly multitasking. You're filtering out background noise, managing eye contact, tracking who's around you, trying not to bump into anyone. That's a cognitive load you didn't sign up for. It drains your focus and slows you down. That's why open plan offices, for example, can become a nightmare for productivity. The interruptions, the movement, The noise. It's all mentally exhausting, and it's the same in schools, hospitals, or even coffee shops where you're just trying to get some work done. Crowding creates distraction. Distraction kills performance. Then there's the personal space issue, which, let's be honest, is a big one. Humans are wired to need a sense of privacy, even if it's just a chair that's yours, or a small corner of the room. That feeling of personal territory matters. In overcrowded environments, that disappears. You feel watched, interrupted, exposed. And when you lose that privacy, you also start to lose a sense of control. That's a powerful psychological shift. When people feel like they can't control their surroundings, that they're constantly being interrupted or intruded upon, they can slip into a state called learned helplessness. It's this mental fatigue that comes from trying to cope with stressors you feel powerless to fix. So even if someone technically has shelter and basic needs, being crammed into a space with no relief can feel like being stuck. It's not just physically uncomfortable, it's emotionally draining. Now let's talk about social tension. You've probably noticed how people get a little snappy when things feel tight, right? That's because crowding increases irritability. We become less tolerant, more reactive, quicker to get frustrated, especially when it feels like our space is being constantly challenged. This isn't just speculation. There was a famous study by researcher John Calhoun, where he put rats in an enclosed, overpopulated space with unlimited food and water. Over time, the social order broke down. They became aggressive, stopped parenting, isolated themselves. Eventually, the population collapsed. Obviously, we're not rats in a lab. But the metaphor sticks. Overcrowding leads to social breakdown, more arguments, less empathy, more people just trying to survive their day instead of connecting with each other. Some people are more vulnerable to these effects than others. Introverts, for instance, or anyone dealing with anxiety or trauma, often feel the strain of crowding much more intensely. Children and the elderly, too. And let's not forget people living in low-income areas who may not have access to any kind of escape space like a park, a backyard, or even a quiet room. So what do we do about it? You can't always control how many people are around you, but you can design smarter spaces. Urban planners and architects are increasingly building with these issues in mind, creating shared green areas, adding semi-private zones, designing layouts that allow people to flow instead of crash into each other. Even in offices, simple things like partitions, quiet rooms, or flexible work from home days can ease the mental burden of crowding. And on a personal level, small habits help. Wearing noise-canceling headphones, taking short walks to reset your mind, rearranging your space so you feel a little more ownership over your corner. It all adds up. Crowding isn't just a space issue. It's a mind issue. And once you understand how it works, how your brain reacts, how your body responds, you start to realize that it's not about being dramatic. It's about being human. When your environment feels too tight, your nervous system isn't overreacting. It's just trying to tell you, hey, I need a little room to breathe. Behavioral conditioning through environment. Ever walked into a movie theater and immediately felt like being quiet? Or gotten sleepy just by lying on your bed, even if you weren't tired? That's environmental conditioning at work. It's subtle, powerful, and it's shaping our behavior way more than we realize. At its core, behavioral conditioning through environment is about how spaces, and the cues inside them, train us to act in certain ways. It's not always deliberate. A lot of the time, it just happens. But once those patterns form, they stick. And suddenly, the environment isn't just a backdrop. It's part of the script. Let's break it down. There are two big names you need to know here: classical conditioning and operant conditioning. Both of them help explain why we do what we do in different spaces. Classical conditioning is when your brain starts associating one thing with another. Like Pavlov's dogs. The bell rings, they get food, and eventually just hearing the bell makes them drool. Simple stuff, right? Now zoom out and apply that to your own life. Let's say you always eat snacks while watching Netflix in bed. Over time, your brain links your bed with snacking. So now, even when you crawl into bed just to sleep, you suddenly want chips. That's conditioning. Your environment, the bed, the lighting, the sound of the Netflix startup screen has become a trigger. Same thing happens in school. If a student always feels anxious in a particular classroom, maybe because of constant tests or a strict teacher, that room starts to carry emotional weight. Even if nothing stressful is happening in that moment, just being in that environment can cause discomfort. The space itself becomes a conditioned stressor. Operant conditioning, on the other hand, is about consequences. If a behavior gets rewarded, it's more likely to happen again. If it gets punished or ignored, it usually fades out. Now, think about how environments are built to encourage or discourage behavior. Take retail stores, for example. The music, the lighting, the layout. It's all carefully designed to influence your movement and decisions. You're rewarded with sensory pleasure, soft music, good smells, attractive displays. The moment you enter, that subtle positive reinforcement makes you want to stay longer and spend more. Open, plan offices do something similar. For better or worse, if standing up and walking across the room gets you judged or interrupted, you'll probably stop doing it. Over time, your behavior adapts to fit the environment. Even if it's uncomfortable, you're being conditioned. Not by someone yelling at you, but by the subtle feedback loop your environment creates. Even color, lighting, and temperature play into this. Warm lighting can make you linger longer in a restaurant. Cooler lighting in offices is used to signal productivity. Dim lights signal calm or quiet. Bright lights, especially in retail or fast food spaces, can increase turnover by making people feel more alert and less relaxed. None of this is random. But it's not just about what companies or architects do to influence you. It also works in reverse. You build your own environmental feedback loops, sometimes without realizing it. Let's say you always work at your kitchen table. Over time, your brain starts associating that spot with mental focus and productivity. So even on days when you're tired, sitting at that table puts you into work mode, faster than if you tried to work from the couch. Same goes for gyms. The smell, the music, the layout of equipment. It creates a mental shortcut. You step into that space, and your brain goes, "Oh, right. This is where we lift heavy things and push ourselves." This is why changing your environment can be a game changer when you're trying to break or build a habit. If you want to quit smoking, stop sitting in the same chair you always used to light up. If you want to read more, don't just decide to do it. Create a cozy spot in your house that your brain starts to associate with calm and focus. Your surroundings are training your brain. And if you're not intentional about them, they'll do it without your permission. There's a fascinating study from environmental psychology where people were more likely to take the stairs instead of the elevator, when motivational signs were placed near the stairwell. Simple visual cues altered behavior in real time. No one was forced. No one was told what to do. The environment nudged them. That's conditioning in action. Same goes for classrooms, just changing the seating arrangement. Say, putting desks in a circle instead of rows can condition students to engage more socially and less hierarchically. The environment sets the tone, and people adapt. This works in therapeutic settings too. Spaces designed with soothing colors, soft textures, and natural light can help patients feel more relaxed and open during counseling sessions. That conditioned sense of safety makes it easier for emotional breakthroughs to happen. It's not just what the therapist says. It's what the space feels like that opens people up. So what does this mean for you? It means if you're trying to change your habits, your mindset, or your emotional state, you don't just need more motivation. You need better environments, because those are what shape behavior silently day after day. It's about setting up spaces that train your brain to work with you, not against you. Making your home, your desk, your routines, even your phone background, part of your behavioral toolkit. Because once you start seeing environments as behavioral shapers, you realize you have way more control than you thought. You're not just reacting to your surroundings. You're being trained by them. And if you want to change your patterns, maybe it's time to change the training ground. Workspace design and productivity. Let's shift gears and talk about workspaces. Specifically, how the way we design and arrange our work environments can have a major impact on our productivity and overall well-being. Think about the last time you walked into your office, or maybe your study area. Was it a place that made you feel energized and motivated to dive into work? Or did it feel like a bit of a mental slog just to sit down and get started? The truth is, where and how we work has a huge effect on our performance and emotional state. And, surprisingly, it's not just about the work itself. It's about the environment we're in. Whether we're working from home, in an office, or a co-working space, the way those spaces are designed plays a key role in how our brains function. So, let's break it down. What is it about workspace design that can either boost our productivity or leave us feeling drained? First off, we've all heard of the term open plan offices, right? They're kind of the poster child of modern office design. The idea was that by removing walls and giving everyone an open, communal space, workers would collaborate more, communicate better, and be more productive. Sounds good in theory, but here's the kicker: open plan offices often end up being a disaster for focus. And it's not just a minor inconvenience. Studies have shown that people working in open offices are more likely to experience distractions, stress, and lower cognitive performance than those in more private settings. Why? Because there's simply too much going on. Think about it: constant chatter, the sound of footsteps, colleagues having meetings or phone calls, maybe even the sound of a printer or a coffee machine buzzing. These aren't just annoying sounds. They're distracting your brain, preventing it from getting into a state of focus and flow. Our brains don't process background noise the way we think they do. Instead, that noise is a form of cognitive load, meaning it requires effort from your brain to filter out distractions, reducing your ability to focus on the task at hand. In contrast, private spaces or quiet zones are often far more conducive to focus and mental clarity. When you have your own space, free from constant interruptions, your brain can really settle into a task, allowing you to be more efficient and productive. And it's not just about noise. Even visual distractions play a role in cognitive performance. A cluttered desk or a room full of disorganized items can lead to cognitive overload, making it harder to stay focused. But the design of a workspace isn't just about reducing distractions. It's about creating a space that actively supports your brain's needs. That means using ergonomic furniture, having natural lighting, and including elements that create a comfortable, calming atmosphere. Take ergonomics, for example. Ever sat in a chair for hours and then had to stretch your back because it was hurting? Or worse, ever had your wrists ache after typing for a while? This type of physical discomfort doesn't just make you feel bad. It also drains your cognitive energy. When your body is uncomfortable, your brain has to work harder just to tolerate it, which reduces your focus and mental stamina. So, investing in ergonomic furniture like comfortable chairs, adjustable desks, and keyboards that support proper posture isn't just about luxury. It's about optimizing cognitive performance. A well-designed chair, for example, supports your back, reducing physical strain and giving your brain more bandwidth to focus on tasks. Then there's lighting. You probably already know how important lighting is for setting the mood. But did you know that lighting can directly impact your cognitive performance and well-being too? Here's the deal: natural light is ideal for cognitive performance. Exposure to natural light regulates your circadian rhythms, the internal clock that tells you when to be awake and when to sleep. In workplaces with lots of natural light, employees often report feeling more energized, less stressed, and more productive. Natural light also helps with mood regulation and reduces the risk of eye strain that comes from artificial lighting. But if you're working in a space without windows, or you're stuck under those harsh fluorescent lights, your brain is getting a mixed signal. Bright artificial lights can make you feel awake, but they can also contribute to stress and fatigue after prolonged exposure. So, if you can, try to incorporate as much natural light as possible into your workspace. And if that's not possible, consider using full-spectrum lights that mimic natural sunlight. But here's the interesting part: it's not just the light itself, it's how you position it. Having light sources in the right places, like over your work area or coming from the side, helps you maintain a sense of visual comfort and mental focus. The last thing you want is to be staring at a screen while dealing with glare from overhead lights. A well-lit workspace reduces that strain, allowing you to stay focused longer. Now, let's talk about something that might not immediately come to mind: biophilic design. It sounds fancy, but it's really just the idea of bringing nature into the built environment. You've probably noticed that plants, natural materials, and even nature-inspired elements are becoming more and more common in modern offices and workspaces. And there's a good reason for that. Research has shown that simply having greenery in your workspace can reduce stress and improve mental clarity. In fact, workplaces that incorporate plants and natural materials tend to see a boost in creativity, problem solving, and overall mood. It's like the natural world is offering a little boost to your cognitive abilities. On a deeper level, biophilic design taps into our innate connection to nature, something that's been hardwired into us over thousands of years. Our brains evolved in natural environments, and when we bring elements of nature into our workspaces, we're helping our minds feel more at home. Plants, water features, wood finishes. These things don't just look good, they actively support our psychological well-being. And finally, don't forget about flexibility. A workspace that allows you to move, adjust, and customize can help create a more productive environment. Whether it's a standing desk, a comfy lounge chair, or the ability to shift locations, having the freedom to change your environment throughout the day helps keep your brain engaged and reduces mental fatigue. It's about giving yourself the space and the options to match your energy and mood. So, whether you're working from home, in a traditional office, or in a shared co-working space, your environment plays a huge role in how you feel and how well you perform. A well-designed workspace helps optimize your mental resources, reduces distractions, and even improves your emotional state. If you're feeling unmotivated or stuck, take a look around you. Is your workspace helping or hindering your productivity? Can you adjust the layout, add some greenery, or adjust the lighting to better support your mental state? Remember, it's not just about the work you're doing. It's about the space you're doing it in. Social environment. Okay, picture this. You're in a room with strangers. Everyone's quiet, heads down. No eye contact, no conversation. Now picture a similar room, same size, same lighting, but everyone's smiling, chatting, engaging, exact same space, completely different experience. That's the power of the social environment. The people within a space and how their presence, behavior, and energy totally shift how you behave. It's not just about where you are. It's about who's there, what they're doing, and how they make you feel. The social environment plays a huge role in how we think, act, and even interpret physical space. Let's break that down. First, there's something called social facilitation. It's a psychological principle that says we tend to perform differently when other people are around. If you're doing something simple or well practiced, like cleaning, walking, or doing jumping jacks, the presence of others usually makes you do it better. But if you're doing something complex or unfamiliar, like giving a speech or solving a tough problem, their presence can actually make performance worse. This has real, world impact. Ever notice how your productivity spikes at a co-working space, even if you're not talking to anyone? That's social facilitation at play. Your brain responds to the energy and presence of others, even in silence. But social environments go deeper than that. They shape norms, unwritten rules that tell us what behavior is acceptable in a given space. Take libraries. Nobody explicitly tells you not to talk loudly. But the vibe, the silence, the way others behave, it teaches you the social rules of the space. Now imagine a sports stadium. Same deal, but reversed. You're expected to yell, cheer, maybe even high-five strangers. The environment permits and encourages that behavior. We adjust automatically because humans are wired to fit into group dynamics. We pick up cues about how to act based on what others are doing. It's a survival trait, a social intelligence skill, and a huge part of environmental psychology. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Group density and group identity also play a role. When you're in a crowded environment, say a subway train, you might feel tense, protective, even irritated. But if you're in the middle of a crowd at a concert for your favorite band, that closeness feels energizing. Same physical conditions, totally different psychological outcome because of the social context and the shared identity. And speaking of shared identity, that's a huge one. We're more comfortable, more expressive, and often more generous in environments where we feel we belong. Whether that's a classroom full of like-minded people, a religious gathering, a hobby meetup, or even a familiar neighborhood cafe. When we feel seen and included, the environment becomes psychologically safe. That's why inclusive design and community building matter, not just on a policy level, but in the actual shaping of emotional safety in physical places. Spaces where people feel judged, unwelcome, or out of place. They become psychologically stressful, and over time, they create avoidance behavior. People steer clear of places where the social environment feels hostile or uncomfortable. Now let's zoom in on one specific group dynamic conformity. You've probably heard of the Asch conformity experiments, the ones where participants gave obviously wrong answers just to match the group. Well, those principles play out in real environments, too. For example, if you walk into a silent museum exhibit and everyone is whispering, you'll whisper too. Not because it's a rule, but because the social behavior of others defines the psychological atmosphere of the space. So basically, we're constantly reading the room and adjusting ourselves to it. But here's the kicker. It works both ways. You're also influencing the environment. Your mood, your posture, your engagement. It contributes to the vibe of the room. You're not just shaped by your social environment. You help shape it. This is why some people seem to light up a room. They shift the social energy, and others can drain it, making a space feel tense, awkward, or closed off. Even furniture arrangement can influence group dynamics. A round table invites conversation. A classroom with rows puts one person in control. A couch pulled close creates intimacy. A waiting room with chairs bolted to the wall says, "Don't talk." Design and social interaction are deeply intertwined, and smart environments, like open learning spaces, collaborative offices, or community parks, are designed to support positive social interaction. So what does this mean for you? It means you can curate your social surroundings just like you'd arrange a room. Want to be more focused? Be around people who are focused. Want to feel uplifted? Spend time in spaces where the energy matches that. Want to spark creativity? Choose environments that invite open, organic connection, because how we behave in a space isn't just about the walls around us. It's about the people within those walls and how they influence the invisible atmosphere we all move through. We don't just exist in physical environments. We exist in social ecosystems. And when they're healthy, inclusive, and aligned, they don't just support your behavior. They help you become the version of yourself you want to be. Cultural variations in environmental experience. Okay, let's do a quick thought experiment. Imagine you walk into a beautifully designed home. Bare floors, minimal furniture, everything in perfect order, clean white walls. You'd probably think, wow, this is peaceful, elegant, sophisticated. Now imagine someone else walks into that same home and they feel uncomfortable, cold, empty, like something's missing. That's not a difference in taste. That's a difference in cultural perception. You see, the way we experience space, how we interpret it, feel in it, and move through it, isn't just about design. It's about culture. It's shaped by where we come from, what we've seen, what we value, and what we expect. Cultural background acts like a lens, one we don't even realize we're wearing, but it filters how we see and react to the environments around us. Let's break it down. In some cultures, open spaces and minimalism are deeply tied to values like tranquility, balance, and mental clarity. Think traditional Japanese interiors. tatami mats, sliding doors, simplicity. That same design in a Western or Latin American context might feel too sparse, even unwelcoming. Where warmth and coziness are often associated with abundance of furniture, textures, and color. It's the same environment, but perceived completely differently. This is why environmental psychology must be cross-cultural, because the ideal space isn't universal. It's contextual, personal, deeply tied to upbringing, tradition, and collective memory. Let's take another example: privacy. In many Western cultures, particularly in North America and parts of Europe, personal space is a big deal. You need your own room, your own desk, your own corner to unwind. The environment is often carved into private zones. Space equals autonomy. But in many Eastern, Middle Eastern, or Latin cultures, communal living is the norm. Sharing space isn't invasive, it's comforting. Living rooms are designed for gathering. Bedrooms may be shared, and that sense of togetherness is what makes a space feel whole. So now imagine designing a workplace, or a hospital, or a classroom without understanding those cultural norms. You could accidentally create spaces that feel isolating to some or chaotic to others. Let's go even deeper, to color and symbolism. White walls in a Scandinavian home, that's modern minimalism. But in some Eastern cultures, white is the color of mourning. In India, red might be used in weddings. Vibrant, sacred. In the US, red could signal danger or urgency. Same color, different meaning. And that meaning affects mood, memory, and even behavior in that space. Now let's talk about vertical space. Something people often overlook in cultures with hierarchical values, like traditional China or many corporate environments in the West. Physical height can be symbolic of power. The boss has a higher floor. The elder sits at the head of the table. There's a top office, a bottom rung. But in more egalitarian cultures, like parts of Scandinavia or indigenous communities, space is designed to feel equal. Circular seating, flat structures, less emphasis on status through layout. Even the way we navigate a room is culturally driven. In some Middle Eastern cultures, it's polite to maintain close proximity during conversation. In many Western or East Asian cultures, that same closeness might feel invasive. This is where proxemics and cultural variation overlap, and it's key to how we design public spaces, meeting rooms, and even digital environments. Oh, and speaking of digital, virtual spaces carry cultural influence too. Website layouts in Japan or Korea are often packed with information, text, heavy, dense, fast moving. That's normal, even expected. In the West, that same design would be seen as overwhelming. We want white space, breathing room, minimalism. So how do we use all this? Well, for one, it reminds us that good design isn't one size fits all. An office that inspires collaboration in one country might create tension in another. A calming hospital room in Europe might feel sterile in South America. Architects, urban planners, interior designers, and even educators need to be culturally literate, not just technically skilled, because the spaces we shape end up shaping people. It also means we should be curious about the environments that make us feel at home and the ones that don't. Ask yourself, why does this space feel comfortable? What memories, values, or expectations is it triggering in me? And maybe most importantly, in our increasingly globalized world, where cultures overlap more than ever, we need spaces that offer flexibility. Places that don't force one cultural experience, but instead invite personalization, inclusivity, and shared meaning. Because a truly powerful environment, it's not just beautiful, It's culturally resonant, a place where everyone can feel seen, understood, and at ease. Urban psychology, let's be honest. Cities are alive. They hum, they rush, they don't sleep. But have you ever stopped to ask, how does urban life affect our minds? Because the truth is, if you've ever felt mentally drained after a day in the city, it's not just in your head, it's because of your head. Welcome to the world of urban psychology, the study of how city life shapes how we think, feel, and behave. Now, we all know urban areas offer a lot opportunity, diversity, culture, constant stimulation. But that same stimulation, it comes at a psychological price. Let's start with density. Cities are packed. More people per square mile, more buildings per block, more noise per minute. And when your brain is constantly navigating that, dodging people on the sidewalk, filtering car horns, processing flashing lights, it starts working overtime. This is where something called cognitive load comes in. Your brain can only take in so much information at once. In urban environments, it's forced to process a lot more, and much faster, than in rural or suburban settings. Over time, that can lead to mental fatigue, lower attention span, and even decision fatigue. Where you're so overstimulated, even small choices feel overwhelming. And let's not forget about pollution. Not just the kind you smell, but also the kind you hear. Research has shown that air pollution in cities doesn't just affect lungs. It's linked to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and even cognitive decline. Meanwhile, noise pollution, sirens, traffic, construction, increases stress hormones like cortisol and disrupts sleep, which messes with your mood and memory. But it's not all doom and gloom. It's about awareness. Let's talk about social interaction next, because this one's interesting. Cities bring people together, right? Crowded streets, packed trains, public events, shared spaces. But ironically, urban living can also make people feel incredibly isolated. There's even a term for this: urban anonymity. You can live in a high-rise with hundreds of people and still not know your neighbor's name. You can walk through a sea of faces and still feel unseen. That disconnection can lead to feelings of loneliness, even though you're surrounded by people 24/7. And studies show that chronic loneliness is just as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Yeah, it's that serious. But on the flip side, urban areas can also foster incredible social resilience. Cities are where communities form around shared interests instead of just geography. You find your people, not just based on proximity, but on purpose. Think book cafes, niche meetups, skate parks, activist groups, urban gardens. The city gives you access to micro-communities that feed your identity. It's a double-edged sword. More potential for isolation, but also more chances to connect, if you're intentional about it. And then there's urban stress, a kind of ambient tension that lingers in the background. You're constantly alert, navigating traffic, watching for strangers, checking your back. Your fight or flight system gets triggered more often just by existing in the hustle. MRI studies show that amygdala activity, the part of your brain that processes fear and threats, is more heightened in urban dwellers than in people from rural areas. Translation: cities keep your brain on edge, even if you don't realize it. But again, it's not all bad. Urban environments are also incredibly adaptive. They teach you how to move through different cultures, think quickly, adjust fast, and build resilience. People who grow up in cities often develop stronger problem-solving skills and higher emotional intelligence. because they have to deal with so many variables constantly. Cities also provide access to healthcare, education, art, innovation, and that can be deeply empowering, especially for marginalized communities who may not have those resources in less developed areas. So what's the takeaway here? Cities amplify everything. They can drain you or energize you. They can isolate or connect. They can stress you out or give you purpose. It all comes down to how you engage with the urban environment and how the environment is designed to support or neglect human well-being. This is where urban planning and psychology need to work hand in hand. Designing green spaces, creating mixed-use neighborhoods, prioritizing walkability, controlling noise levels, building for community, not just capacity. Because when cities are designed with the human mind in mind, not just buildings and roads, they become more than places to live. They become places to thrive. So whether you love the chaos of downtown or long for a quieter corner of the world, just know this: your brain remembers your environment. And in the city, every street, sound, and stranger leaves a psychological footprint. Biophilic design. Okay, let's paint a picture real quick. You walk into a space filled with soft, natural light. There's a wall of greenery, the sound of trickling water in the background, and big windows that frame a view of the trees outside. You don't know why, but suddenly your shoulders drop. Your breath slows. You feel good, grounded, at ease. That's not an accident. That's biophilic design. And it's not just about adding plants. It's about reconnecting people with nature through the spaces they live and work in. See, humans evolved in nature. We spent thousands of years outdoors, hunting, gathering, living in tune with natural cycles. But now, we spend on average 90% of our lives indoors. So what happens when your brain, which is wired to thrive in green spaces, gets trapped under fluorescent lights and concrete ceilings all day? Stress, fatigue, irritability. You might not even notice it, but your body does. That's where biophilic design comes in, not just as a vibe, but as a solution. So what is it exactly? At its core, biophilic design is the intentional integration of natural elements, not just physically, but psychologically, into built environments. It taps into something called biophilia, which literally means love of life. The term was popularized by biologist E.O. Wilson, who argued that humans have an innate connection to nature, and we suffer when that connection is broken. And here's the science to back that up. A study from the University of Exeter found that employees who had plants in their office were 15% more productive than those who didn't. Exposure to natural light during the day is linked to better sleep quality, improved mood, and reduced depression symptoms. Hospitals that have windows overlooking greenery see patients recover faster, with less pain medication needed. This isn't woo. It's neuroscience. It's cortisol levels. It's real. So how does biophilic design actually show up in a space? Let's break it into a few key components. 1. Direct contact with nature. This is the obvious one. Indoor plants, water features, gardens, natural ventilation. Think lobbies with vertical gardens or cafes filled with sunlight and hanging vines. Even small additions, like a living wall or a tabletop fountain, can dramatically reduce stress levels and improve attention span. 2. Natural materials and textures: wood, stone, clay, bamboo. These elements ground a space. They're not just aesthetic. They activate our sensory memory. A wooden floor just feels warmer than a tile one. A textured stone wall invites touch, not just sight. It's about engaging the senses, not just the eyes. 3. Natural light and circadian alignment. Your brain has a built-in clock. Your circadian rhythm that regulates everything from your sleep cycle to your hormone production. When you spend all day under artificial light with no cues from the outside world, that rhythm gets thrown off. Biophilic design prioritizes natural light exposure through skylights, large windows, or smart lighting systems that change throughout the day to mimic the sun. It's not just pretty, it's functional, and it can literally help you sleep better. 4. Views of nature or even nature simulations. Can't install a garden in your office? No problem. Even photographs of nature or window views of trees or water can trigger the same calming neural response as actual outdoor exposure. Some schools and hospitals have found that even VR nature experiences help reduce stress in environments where actual green space is limited. 5. Biomorphic forms and patterns. Nature doesn't do straight lines and harsh edges. It flows, it curves, it spirals. Biophilic design often incorporates organic shapes and natural symmetry, like the branching of trees, the patterns on a leaf, or the ripple of water. Even on a subconscious level, these patterns calm the brain and make a space feel more harmonious. So what's the real world impact of all this? Let's say you work in an open, plan office that feels sterile and gray. You're distracted, tired, and always a little on edge. Now imagine that same space, but with warm wooden floors, leafy corners, sunlight streaming in, maybe a soft bubbling water feature near the break area. That space feels alive. It energizes instead of drains. And over time, you're more focused. You're less anxious. You even feel more creative. That's not magic. That's design psychology done right. And it's catching on. Companies like Google, Amazon, and Apple have poured millions into biophilic design, not just to make offices pretty, but to make their employees thrive. Schools are using it to boost attention in students. Hospitals are using it to promote healing. Even urban planners are applying it to parks, streets, and public buildings. Because we now know, from data, from experience, from biology, that people function better when they're not cut off from the natural world. So here's the takeaway. We don't need to move into the forest to feel good again. We just need to bring the forest back into our lives. Little by little, leaf by leaf, window by window. Biophilic design isn't just about beauty. It's about belonging. And in a world full of concrete and code, it might be exactly what our brains have been missing. Environmental influences on health. You know that feeling when you step outside after being indoors all day. Take a deep breath and instantly feel better. That's not just you being dramatic. That's your body responding to environmental input. And it turns out, the physical environment around us plays a huge role in shaping our overall health. Let's break this down, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. We're talking about things like air quality, access to green space, noise levels, light exposure, and even how buildings are laid out. And the effects these have aren't just about comfort. They directly impact both our physical and mental well-being. Let's start with the obvious one: air quality. If the air around you is filled with pollutants, think car exhaust, industrial emissions, mold, smoke, or even dust, it doesn't just irritate your lungs. It affects your entire system. Poor air quality has been linked to asthma, cardiovascular disease, and even cognitive decline. And this isn't new. A 2020 study from Harvard found that even small increases in long-term exposure to fine particulate matter PM 2.5 were associated with a higher risk of death from COVID-19. But the impact goes deeper than just breathing. Poor air quality also affects mental health. Research shows that exposure to air pollution is linked to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and even dementia. It creates low-grade inflammation in the brain, messes with neurotransmitters, and quietly chips away at your emotional resilience over time. Now contrast that with access to green space. Nature is basically a natural reset button for the brain. Multiple studies, we're talking hundreds, have shown that people who live near parks, forests, or even tree-lined streets report lower stress, better sleep, and higher overall life satisfaction. One landmark study from the University of Exeter looked at thousands of people in the UK and found that those living near green spaces had significantly lower levels of mental distress, even when controlling for income, employment, and education. And these effects weren't just for people who used the green space regularly. Just being near it was enough to improve mood and well-being. That's wild, right? Even something as simple as having a window with a view of trees or a plant in your room can reduce stress levels and improve cognitive function. There's something about natural environments that our brains just trust. They feel safe, restorative, and mentally spacious. And then there's noise. We touched on this a bit earlier, but let's go deeper here. Environmental noise, especially from traffic or construction, isn't just annoying. Chronic exposure to noise has been linked to increased levels of stress hormones, higher blood pressure, and a greater risk of heart disease. The World Health Organization actually classifies noise pollution as a serious public health issue, especially in urban areas. It's been shown to disrupt sleep, reduce learning outcomes in children, and increase irritability and aggression in adults. Think about how you feel when you're in a loud, chaotic environment versus when you're in a quiet, peaceful one. Your nervous system knows the difference, and it reacts accordingly. Light also plays a huge role in your health, especially your circadian rhythm, which controls your sleep-wake cycle. If you're exposed to too much artificial light at night, like blue light from screens or harsh overhead LEDs, your brain gets confused. It thinks it's still daytime and delays the release of melatonin, which makes it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. Poor lighting environments are directly tied to sleep disorders, fatigue, and even depression. And on the flip side, exposure to natural daylight during the day boosts mood, sharpens focus, and helps regulate your body clock. It's one of the reasons why working in a windowless office can feel so draining, while even a 20-minute walk outside can change your whole mental state. Now, zooming out a bit, think about how environments are designed overall. People living in neighborhoods with broken sidewalks, poor lighting, no parks, and limited transportation options tend to be more sedentary, more isolated, and more stressed. On top of that, they often don't have access to fresh, healthy food, which creates a perfect storm for chronic health conditions. There's even a term for this: social determinants of health. It's the idea that where you live, your ZIP code, your neighborhood, your physical environment, can be just as predictive of your health outcomes as your genetics or lifestyle choices. And the scary part, many of these environmental stressors are invisible. You don't see the air you breathe. You might not notice the noise or lighting until it starts messing with your sleep or mood. It creeps up slowly, but your body keeps score. The good news is awareness is step one, because once you realize that your environment is either draining you or refueling you, you can start to make changes, even small ones. Open your windows. Bring plants into your space. Prioritize time in nature. Use air purifiers if needed. Take regular breaks outside. Reduce nighttime screen exposure. Advocate for greener, safer, better designed neighborhoods. These aren't just nice to haves. They're necessities for mental and physical health. So yeah, your environment isn't just the backdrop to your life. It's one of the main characters. And the more intentionally you design the space around you, or choose where you spend your time, the more you support your own well-being from the ground up. Sustainable environments. Have you ever walked into a space that just felt good, and you couldn't quite explain why? Maybe it was a cozy cafe with lots of sunlight, wood accents, some greenery hanging from the ceiling, and this quiet sense that, yeah, this place was thoughtfully built. That vibe, that ease, that emotional calm you felt, that might have been sustainability working its magic on your brain, and you didn't even realize it. See, when we talk about sustainable environments, we usually think of eco-friendly buildings, solar panels, compost bins, recycled wood, all that good green stuff. And yeah, it's all part of it. But there's another layer to it that's rarely talked about: the psychological impact of sustainable spaces. And spoiler, it's deeper than you think. Let's unpack this. First off, humans have a pretty instinctive connection to nature. We evolved in it. We were meant to be around natural elements: trees, sky, earth, water. So when we enter a space that aligns with that, even subtly, our brains respond in kind. We relax. We feel safer, more connected. That's the beginning of the psychological effect of sustainability. Now, what actually makes an environment sustainable? We're not just talking about using bamboo instead of plastic. Sustainability in design includes use of natural materials and light, low energy consumption and good air quality, efficient use of space and resources, integration with nature, like gardens, green roofs, or living walls, minimal waste in construction and operation. So, where's the mental health link? Let's start with indoor air quality. A major aspect of sustainable design, eco-friendly spaces tend to avoid toxic materials, chemical-heavy finishes, or cheap plastics that off-gas harmful substances over time. Poor air can cause headaches, fatigue, and brain fog. Cleaner air, on the other hand, literally clears your mind, improving focus, lowering stress, and reducing respiratory issues that silently chip away at your well-being. Same goes for natural light. Sustainable environments often maximize access to daylight, not just for energy efficiency, but because our bodies and minds are deeply regulated by light. Exposure to natural light helps regulate our circadian rhythm, that internal clock that governs our sleep, wake cycles, energy levels, and even mood. A study by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine found that workers in offices with natural light exposure slept better, were more active, and reported a higher overall quality of life than those in windowless spaces. So yeah, light isn't just aesthetics, it's brain fuel. And then there's biophilic integration, or basically bringing nature indoors. Think green walls, indoor plants, water features, wood, stone, organic shapes. Sustainable spaces tend to include these naturally. And guess what? There's solid science behind this. Being exposed to nature, or even natural elements that mimic nature, has been shown to lower blood pressure, decrease anxiety, boost creativity, and even speed up healing in hospitals. It's like your nervous system sees a plant and goes, "Ah, okay, we're safe. Now here's the fascinating part. Even the idea that a space is sustainable can influence your emotional response to it. In one experiment, participants rated a room as more calming, more enjoyable, and even more beautiful when they were told it was sustainably built, even though it was the exact same room as the control group saw. That psychological effect is called moral satisfaction, where knowing that your environment is aligned with your values increases positive emotional feedback. In simpler terms, when you know you're in a space that's good for the planet, you tend to feel better about being in it. And it doesn't stop with design. Sustainable environments also promote more intentional living. When your space is built to reduce waste, conserve resources, and flow with the natural world, it encourages you to do the same. And that kind of living, slower, more mindful, more aware, has real psychological benefits. Less impulsivity, more gratitude, a stronger sense of control. It's like the space is silently encouraging your brain to chill out and realign on a bigger scale. Cities and communities designed around sustainability show major mental health advantages. Green public transport, walkable neighborhoods, access to parks, community gardens. These things reduce pollution, lower noise, and increase social cohesion. That means fewer stressors, more connection, and a deeper sense of belonging. All things your brain craves, especially in a world where most people feel overwhelmed, disconnected, and overstimulated. Here's something wild. A study published in The Lancet found that people living in greener, more eco-conscious neighborhoods had significantly lower levels of depression and anxiety, even after controlling for income, education, and age. So yes, sustainability isn't just an environmental move, it's a mental health intervention. And this is where sustainable environments really shine. They feel good because they're designed to do good. When your space is kind to the planet, it ends up being kind to your brain too. It supports your well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally, without needing you to consciously do anything. That's the power of design that works with nature instead of against it. So the next time you walk into a space that feels effortlessly calming, take a closer look. Are there plants, natural light, clean air? Is it made with care and purpose? Because chances are, it's not just a nice room. It's a sustainable one. And your brain knows the difference, even if you don't notice it right away. Environmental aesthetics. Let's talk about something we all notice, even if we don't always have the words for it. You ever walk into a space and just feel a certain way, without anyone saying a word, like stepping into a cozy cabin and instantly feeling at ease? Or entering a cold, fluorescent lit office and suddenly feeling tense, unmotivated, or low-key drained? That reaction, that's environmental aesthetics at work. It's the study of how the look, feel, and sensory details of an environment shape our emotional response, often before we're even aware of it. And here's the fascinating part. We don't just react to our environments visually. We react sensory-wide: sight, sound, texture, smell, even temperature. Your brain is constantly scanning the environment for cues, and those cues don't just tell you where you are. They tell you how to feel in that space. Let's start with visual aesthetics. What you see. We're naturally drawn to balance, symmetry, and proportion. Architects have known this for centuries. The ancient Greeks literally designed temples using mathematical ratios they believed were universally pleasing. It's why we find clean lines and harmonious shapes calming. They signal order. Meanwhile, environments with visual clutter Sharp contrasts or mismatched design elements can create low-level mental friction, kind of like background static in your brain. Your eyes are trying to make sense of the space, but your brain's getting mixed signals, and that can lead to subtle stress or discomfort, even if you can't put your finger on why. Now, this doesn't mean everything has to be minimalist or Pinterest perfect. In fact, some people feel more emotionally connected to spaces that are layered, textured, or even a little messy, because they tell a story. That's the thing. Aesthetic impact is personal. It depends on your experiences, your memories, even your culture. But there are some universal patterns. For example, nature-inspired aesthetics, like wood textures, flowing water, or natural light, are almost always associated with comfort, peace, and restoration. That's part of what's called biophilic aesthetics. We'll dive deeper into that in another section. But spoiler, your brain loves the look and feel of nature. Now let's talk about color, which is technically part of visual aesthetics, but deserves its own spotlight. Different colors trigger different emotional responses. Warm tones like soft reds and golden ambers can feel cozy and inviting. Cool tones like blues and greens tend to be calming, serene. But if a space is too dark or saturated in harsh, artificial tones, that can make it feel oppressive, sterile, or even emotionally heavy. And again, culture plays a role here too. For instance, white is a symbol of purity in some cultures, and a symbol of mourning in others. So our interpretation of a color is part biology, part experience, part meaning. Next, there's spatial flow, how a space is arranged, and how your body can move through it. Tight, crowded layouts can make you feel anxious or boxed in. Open, airy spaces can help you breathe a little easier, literally and mentally. Even things like ceiling height can impact mood. Higher ceilings are often associated with freedom and creativity. Lower ceilings, more focus and security, but potentially more tension, too, if paired with poor lighting or noise. Sound plays a role in aesthetic perception, too. Have you ever walked into a room and noticed the echo? A space with too many hard surfaces reflects sound harshly. That can feel overwhelming. But a space with soft textures, rugs, or acoustic design, it absorbs sound, creating a sense of calm and comfort. The sound of a space is part of its aesthetic vibe. Same goes for smell. Think fresh, baked bread in a kitchen versus sterile chemical cleaner in a waiting room. The scent lingers, not just in the air, but in your emotional memory. And we haven't even gotten to lighting. Another massive part of environmental aesthetics. Soft, indirect lighting tends to soothe. Natural light regulates your circadian rhythm, boosts mood, and makes a space feel alive. Harsh fluorescent lighting. It can flatten a space, and your energy with it. That's why mood lighting isn't just for dates or spa days. It's an essential part of designing an environment that speaks to how you want to feel. So why does any of this matter? Because aesthetics aren't just about how a place looks. They're about how a place feels to be in. And that feeling affects everything. From your stress levels to your concentration, your sleep, your creativity, even your social behavior. Here's a cool stat. According to studies in environmental psychology, people rate aesthetically pleasing environments as not only more enjoyable but also more safe, clean, and functional. Even if the functionality is exactly the same, our brain assigns meaning based on aesthetic experience. In other words, beautiful spaces don't just feel better. They work better because they align your physical surroundings with your emotional needs. So whether you're designing a home, a workspace, or just choosing where to sit in a public area. Aesthetics matter, and tuning into the sensory experience of your environment can help you feel more grounded, more focused, and more at ease. It's not about fancy decor or expensive furniture. It's about creating environments that support your nervous system, that feel intuitive, welcoming, and safe. Because when a space speaks your emotional language, you don't just see it differently. You live in it differently. Ambient soundscapes. You're probably already familiar with the idea of background noise, right? Maybe it's the gentle hum of traffic outside, the soft rustle of wind through trees, or even the light melody of a favorite playlist playing softly while you work or relax. What you might not know is that these sounds, whether they're from nature music or just general background noise, have a huge impact on your mood, your mental state, and even your productivity. Let's break it down. Nature sounds, like the sound of rain, wind, or birds chirping, have this almost magical way of calming our minds. Ever wonder why a walk in the park feels so refreshing, or why you feel instantly more relaxed when you hear the ocean waves crashing on the shore? It's because our brains have been hardwired over millions of years to respond positively to natural sounds. Think about it. In prehistoric times, these sounds were often associated with safety and tranquility. The sound of flowing water, for instance, signaled a fresh water source, a necessity for survival. Birds chirping meant that predators were likely absent and the air was calm. This response doesn't just disappear when we're living in modern cities. In fact, nature sounds can still trigger that same sense of calm and relief. Studies have shown that natural sounds can lower cortisol levels, the stress hormone, lower heart rate, and even improve focus. So, if you're working or trying to relax, the sound of a gentle stream or a light breeze can do wonders for easing anxiety and increasing your ability to focus. Now, here's where it gets interesting: music. While nature sounds are great for relaxation, music has a different role to play. It can both energize and inspire you, or it can help you slip into a more meditative, focused state. The key lies in how the music is structured. For instance, fast-paced music with a strong rhythm can actually boost energy and productivity. Ever notice how you start moving faster or feel more pumped when you're listening to something upbeat, like pop or dance music? There's a science behind that, too. Research has found that upbeat tunes can increase dopamine release, that feel-good chemical in your brain that makes you feel motivated and ready to take action. But what about when you're working on something that needs deep concentration, like writing or studying? You might want to skip the fast beats and opt for something more ambient, something that stays in the background and doesn't demand too much attention. Instrumental music, particularly classical music or ambient electronic soundscapes, has been shown to improve focus and cognitive performance. That's because it doesn't distract your brain with lyrics or complex rhythms. Instead, it creates a calm, steady backdrop that helps you zone in on the task at hand. But here's the cool part. You don't need to be actively listening to the music to benefit from it. Even if it's just playing softly in the background, your brain still picks up on the rhythms, tones, and melodies, and your mood shifts accordingly. In fact, researchers have found that music, even at low volumes, can influence how we process information, enhancing memory recall and even improving problem-solving skills. That's why so many people swear by background music when studying or working. And it's not just about productivity. Soundscapes can play a huge role in mood regulation too. Let's say you've had a rough day, you're stressed, and you're trying to unwind. You throw on some calming nature sounds or soft jazz music, and within minutes, you start to feel that tension melt away. Your mind quiets, your body relaxes, and the day's stresses fade into the background. This effect isn't just imaginary either. Research shows that listening to calming sounds can activate parts of the brain that are linked to relaxation and emotional regulation. The sound of flowing water, for example, is consistently linked with peacefulness and a sense of safety. It's a direct link between what you hear and how you feel. The ambient sounds you surround yourself with are creating an emotional atmosphere that influences how your brain processes the world around you. Now, let's talk a little bit about white noise. Ever heard of it? White noise is a constant, even sound, like the hum of a fan, the buzz of a refrigerator, or even the gentle sound of static on a radio. While it might seem annoying to some, white noise can actually be incredibly effective for masking other, more distracting sounds. That's why a lot of people use it to block out office chatter or outside traffic noise when they're trying to focus. And guess what? Some research has shown that white noise can actually improve cognitive performance. When it's playing softly in the background, it creates a kind of sonic blanket that reduces distractions, making it easier to focus on whatever task you're working on. It's also been found that white noise can help people sleep better. If you're someone who struggles with sleep disturbances from outside noise, say, neighbors or traffic, the consistent hum of white noise can help mask those disruptions and create a more peaceful sleep environment. But let's not forget about the power of silence. It might sound counterintuitive, but sometimes the best soundscape is no sound at all. Complete silence can be incredibly restorative for the mind. In quiet spaces, your brain gets the chance to rest, recharge, and recalibrate. It's like hitting the reset button for your mental and emotional state. So, whether you're in need of focus, relaxation, or just some background noise to keep your mind at ease, your ambient soundscape plays a huge role in shaping how you feel and how productive you can be. It's more than just noise. It's a tool, a guide, something you can use to enhance your mental state. And right now, as you settle into this soundscape, remember that the soft rustling, the calming tones, the ambient melodies, all of these are shaping your experience. They're helping your mind relax, settle, and drift into a space of calm. The right sound can make all the difference. So the next time you find yourself needing a little mental reset, think about the sounds around you and how you can use them to boost your mood, your focus, or even your sleep. Environmental factors in decision making. Let's talk about something a little sneaky, something most of us don't even realize is happening. But it totally shapes how we think, what we buy, and even the moral decisions we make. I'm talking about how our physical surroundings influence our decisions. You might think that most of your choices are based on logic, preferences, or personal values, and yeah, that's partly true. But research in environmental psychology shows that the space around us, the lighting, colors, layout, even the temperature, has a subtle but powerful impact on the decisions we make. Let's start with something simple: shopping behavior. You've probably walked into a store and immediately felt either comfortable or just kind of off. That vibe, it's by design. Stores are crafted to guide you, not just where you walk, but how you buy. For example, the lighting in a store can literally influence whether you make impulse purchases. Bright lighting tends to create higher energy, making people feel more aroused, which can lead to more impulsive decisions. Meanwhile, dim lighting tends to slow people down and encourage more deliberate thinking. So a luxury store, for instance, might use soft, ambient lighting to make you linger longer and reflect more deeply on premium purchases. It's not an accident. Then there's music. Slow tempo music in a store has been shown to make people shop more slowly and spend more. Fast music, on the other hand, speeds people up. And even the scent in the air can play a role. Scents like lavender or vanilla can make a space feel warm and inviting, while citrusy or peppermint smells can create alertness and energy. All of this subtly influences what people buy. And how much? Now let's zoom out a little from stores and look at everyday life decisions and how our environment primes our thinking. Here's a crazy example from a classic study. Researchers placed people in two different rooms. One room was neat, organized, and clean. The other was messy and chaotic. Then they asked both groups to make a choice. Do you want a healthy snack or a chocolate bar? Guess what? People in the clean room were way more likely to choose the healthy option. Why? Because the orderliness of the room subtly nudged them toward self-control and higher order thinking. The messy room. It primed people to seek comfort and go for the indulgent choice. We don't always realize it, but our brains are constantly scanning the environment for cues. Little nudges that tell us how to behave, what's appropriate, and even what kind of person we should be in that moment. Take temperature, for example. Warmer environments tend to make people feel more connected and emotionally open. There's even a term called embodied cognition, which is basically the idea that physical sensations affect psychological judgments. So someone holding a warm drink might literally judge others as more friendly or trustworthy just because of that warmth. Wild, right? And it doesn't stop at snacks or shopping. Our environment can even affect moral decision-making. In one study, researchers found that people in brightly lit rooms were more likely to act ethically or make more moral choices compared to those in dim lighting. The theory is that brightness creates a sense of being watched or exposed, triggering more self-regulation. Even though there's no one actually watching, the environment gives off the feeling of accountability. Similarly, a room with mirrors can encourage people to behave more honestly. Seeing yourself reflected, even passively, increases self-awareness, which makes people more likely to act in line with their values. It's like your environment becomes a quiet observer, influencing the version of yourself that shows up. And here's another cool layer: nature. Being in natural settings, like a park, a forest, or even just a room with a window view of trees, can make people more generous and future-oriented. There's something about natural environments that encourages long-term thinking and cooperative behavior. One theory is that, because nature makes us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves, we make choices that reflect bigger picture thinking, like helping others, delaying gratification, or protecting the environment. On the flip side, environments that feel crowded, noisy, or sterile can make us more defensive, impatient, or individualistic, even if we don't consciously feel stressed. It's all happening below the surface. And all of this ties into a concept psychologists call choice architecture. The idea that by shaping the environment, you can shape the decisions people make, not by restricting choice, but by designing the context in which those choices are made. It's the reason healthy snacks are placed at eye level in some cafeterias, or why some cities design their public spaces to encourage walking and biking instead of driving. Environments are always sending signals, and the better we understand those signals, the better we can design spaces and lives that support our goals and values. So the next time you find yourself making a choice, whether it's what to buy, what to eat, or how to respond in a moral dilemma, take a second and look around, because the room you're in might be making the decision with you.